And we're live with the main man, Enrique, because we're going to go through the Model G ILI, so NiTx, which roughly corresponds to, well, I think it corresponds quite well actually to the Kersey INTJ mastermind and the Behrens INTJ as well. So as well as Enrique, we have another person who resembles a psychological model that leads with NI, Sana, IEI. Insistent she resembles INFP and MBTI though, but INFJ and Kersey. We also have Bradley, LII resembler, TINX, Enneagram Type 5. Enrique identifies with Enneagram Type 1. Sana identifies with Enneagram Type 4. Social last. Doesn't like the FE harmony thing in MBTI. We have RW here, ENTJ resembler, but also resembles ENFJ for some extra typological reasons, such as upbringing and doing a marketing degree. We have this other Ben on my laptop. And so I'm going to share the screen and give you an overview of what we're going to look at so people can get an idea of sort of the shape of the Hangouts. So these are the two functions that we're going to look at. And Jack Aronsky, oh sorry, Jack Aaron. I don't know why sometimes I call him Jack Aronsky. So we're going to look at the TE and the SE. First of all, I'll ask Sana, because she's a little bit of a critic and an honest person. Are these definitions okay for TE and SE and Socionics?
It's okay.
Right, okay. Right. So we're looking at these two functions. We're going to look at the positions of those two functions, demonstrative and manipulative. We're going to start off by, we're going to do a little bit of I'm going to do a little bit of discussion about the auxiliary function and how much, and like how we test it. And because Socionics struggles with having a decent test that people can agree on. So a little bit on the auxiliary position. What the actual, because we've done this with the creative function. We did a lot with Enrique, sort of showing how strong his TI is. And now we can sort of compare it with the TE. Carl Jung was a little bit, and we'll go over that, well, how Carl Jung sort of said, well, basically NI with a powerful intellect. He didn't specify practical thinking. This went a little bit too far, I think, Socionics, in saying two auxiliary functions. This is the overall. This was done for the Dario Hangouts. If you want to see this hangout with Dario, you might think, oh, why is that good, man? Well, because I go through the Model G of NiTx and I ask Dario sort of how true it is in his experience. And so he talks quite a bit about the creative function and how he thinks that not everyone who sort of resembles NiTx has that well developed. He thinks it's a function that comes with development, the TI. And he said that in his particular case, he developed it when he was doing his PhD in systems science, and he was around a lot of LII resembling people. I'm sort of converting from his language. He would have said INTP, but I know he means LII. So we're going to do that. We're going to do a little bit on TE. We're going to look at Dario's TE sort of questionnaire because it's quite close to business logic, because Dario is very business oriented. We're going to look at the extroverted sensing in this. You've got the touch, you've got the power. We're going to look at Olga's definition of SE. We'll have a look at Dario's definition of SE and see how different it is from Socionics SE, and see if Enrique still likes it nonetheless. We've got the profile. We've got Jeff's FI joke, something on charges, all of the ones, and then basically that's it. This is the channel. These are the things that are there. If you ever get lost, the playlists have been made because there's so many videos. The playlists have been made. So let's go here. Yeah. So we're going to talk about that block in the bottom left, TE and SE, two valued functions. We're Victor thinks that the use of these functions is situational. So I will ask Enrique, when do you think you use TE?
It's basically when I start my day, I pretty much build a list of action items that I need to take care of, and when it's time to take care of those things, I just knock them out. Like, for instance, today I woke up and I changed the transmission oil on my Jeep. I went to go get food. I did some groceries. I came back. I took the trash out. It's just like boom, 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 like working down a list. And when that's done, then it's done. So it's not something that's it feels more like a tool. I have conscious control of it. Yeah.
How about how much, when you're sort of in your head at a desk, how much do you think you use TE?
Quite a bit, because if I'm at my desk, then that basically means that I'm working. So I'm engaging it quite a bit.
Any examples?
Well, I have, for instance, I would look at tickets that I have. So in my job, I'm assigned tickets. So let's say this one ticket says you got to fix checkout flow. There's a problem with the checkout flow on this site. Here's the steps to reproduce the issue. This is what the desired result after you finish fixing it. So then I just go one by one and knock out all the tickets.
So, as people know, I like Model G, but I'll also point out little things where the theory isn't 100% true. And that's because all of the functions are not equal in terms of how much, say, our social field calls on them to be used. So, for instance, as Enrique said there, when he's at work, work is going to pretty much call on most people's TE. So it's going to be dragged out quite a bit. So, for instance, even with Jeff, where he's got tertiary launcher TE, he's going to show quite a bit of TE use, and he's told me about how that's improved quite a bit. So theoretically, perhaps it might be the case when you're more at home. The idea would be that ILI is more NI and TI. And only when sort of like when they, but I suppose you have to think about when they're on their territory. And I think what we can do is when we go through the bullet points of TE, there'll be certain things in the way the bullet points are phrased which might give an indication of what Victor thinks when he thinks ILI is on its territory. We might be able to work it out from that, sort of like backwards, because this is one of these concepts, this idea of territory or not is something that mostly works. I mean, it works for LII. When LII is on their territory, so TI and X, they're more expressive. And you can see how they can act a bit like ENFP. So the question would then be, so ILI is probably going to do TE more than LII does any, if the task in front of them is calling for TE so much.
I can say this. I mean, when it comes to energy usage, it's I can work very easily for 16 hours without It doesn't really drain me. Whereas when I look at other people, you know, they start getting tired or they need a break, or what, that doesn't really happen to me.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this slightly out of order. I usually would have gone from the left and go through it, but I think in order to make it more solid, I'll just go through the bullet points, because then we can get an idea of what we think Victor means by when the ILI is on their territory, they use TE. Because just theoretically, we can try and get an idea of when he thinks ILI is using TI and when he thinks ILI is using TE. Because I remember you saying that when we did the creative TI, actually, when we did the social mission block, we were going through how you think you use quite a bit of TI in your job, but I think that was sort of confined to, was it finding errors and inaccuracies in other people's work?
Yes, mainly when I find myself engaging TI when I'm like reviewing code, or well, I don't even know if it ever really even turns off, but when I'm reviewing code, when I'm researching a new software development technique, or yeah, something of that sort. Basically, whenever I'm looking for any type of inconsistency. So if I'm researching a new technology, I want to make sure that whatever we're thinking of replacing that with can still do the job. So
You use an interesting word there, technology. How are you using the word technology? Because NLP uses the word technology as sort of like, if you were, and when you look in the dictionary, it will say the application of scientific knowledge to a practical purpose. What is technology for you in your experience? Because when you said there, when I'm using a new technology, can you give us some examples?
the tool. So let's say there's I don't know. Let's say a new database came out. A new database technology comes out, and okay, can it do everything that our current database technology do? Can it do it better? What are the pros and cons? And you start looking for inconsistencies in where the system can fail or break. Also looking for where the situation will improve.
No.
So
that is, I'll just say that is very Kersey arranger, like looking for where things can go wrong in the future, and a filter, a focus on where can things go wrong and trying to avoid those things going wrong.
There's actually a good example of this is one time I was looking at a specific technology, and everything seemed great. Everything was great. It performed better. It was faster, and the code base was even lighter. However, the upgrading process, whenever they made a change to it, you'd have to go through it again, and that process was so involved that it basically negated all of the pros. So it's like thinking out, further out.
Right. I reckon the audience can read all of this on the screen. There's no point me reading through whilst it's been on screen. So folks, instead of me reading this out, you can pause it and take it in. So roughly equates with the auxiliary function in Jung and MBTI. So you can see the stuff down there. We're going to get to the bullet points because I want to, and we're going to have a look at this. So what I'm trying to get at is, do you think you're doing these things? I'll just ask you, put it different, because I think that ILI resemblers are doing these things on the left a lot. Would you
lot.
say that you're doing that a lot? Can you give me some examples of situations where you're not doing the black logic thing? The T, the square.
When I'm not doing it.
Yeah, when you're not doing it.
Yeah, that's not incredibly obvious at the moment.
I'll just from a theoretical point of view, I will say it might be a little bit tricky because the way Victor defines TI plus, it's very TE because it's like following a structure, and I suppose the difference with TE would be that it's more likely to go, this method's not working, I'm going to switch to something that works. Whereas the TI plus mindset is a little bit more like the SJ mindset in MBTI of wanting to sort of rigidly stick to standard operating procedure until it's like demonstrably doesn't work. So that's the only real difference I can see between, and also that Socionics TE, Galenko TE might be a little bit more, have more of a practical focus on it than say the TI plus, the logic of uniform structure.
Well, even when I'm TIing, right? When I'm engaging TI, there's always a purpose, a goal. There's an end. Like I'm not gonna spin my wheels to not get some, I guess, profit out of it at the end. You know, there needs to be a payoff, and I think that is the TE aspect of the situation.
I have an idea. Sally, you talked to Enrique quite a bit. In your social interactions with him, do you think that sometimes he sort of switches off the TE, but is sort of that the TI is still sort of working there in the background?
Yeah.
Could you give us an example, please?
Well, just whenever we discuss some kind of theory.
Right. Okay.
But I mean, it's always kind of ready to spring into action.
Actually,
Right.
I can think of a time when I'm not engaging CE. I think when I'm playing my guitar.
Mm.
Because when I'm playing my guitar, it's more about getting something out than getting something done.
Bradley, you're a music person. Do you want to, have you got any follow-up questions for Enrique?
I have a few, but I don't want to take up too much time.
That's okay. Take 5 minutes. That's okay.
All right. I guess the first question I'd have would be, what is it that you enjoy about playing guitar? Like, is it like a feeling, or is it do you have like a logical thought process for doing it, or?
So this is gonna sound a little strange, but I in different situations I tend to hear music in my head, and for whatever reason, these sounds that I hear in my head, it's like an auditory representation of my current state, whatever that means. I guess it's kind of tied to I would say FI, and so when I play it and I make it real, I'm able to actually hear it objectively, not in my head. It kind of gives me insight to how I actually feel at that moment in time.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense to me. Do you music associate? So if there's certain things going on in your life, do you have music that you like link to what you're going through, or music that you sort of hear in relation to what you see, or how does that work?
It's not dependent on what I see. It's dependent on, and this is a recent discovery. I've always heard these sounds ever since I can remember. But I started playing guitar, and it 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 allows me to access that part of myself. Um, so to answer your question, it's more of an human condition.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I have similar experiences with music. I do tend to associate places and situations to music, but not necessarily like my own music or what I can do. It's just sort of like there's so much going on. It's like sometimes it's like my own playing, sometimes it's like a big orchestra thing, sometimes it's like someone singing. So, but I do get that certain situations can bring up certain music, and sometimes personally, sometimes I can express it myself, sometimes I can, and it's just sort of stuck up here. But I do very much relate and can agree to what you said about like the music being about the human condition. Um, I guess those were my main two questions. Uh, yeah, but thank you for answering.
Yeah.
That was good because it sort of showed a new side of Enrique that didn't come through in the previous two
Yeah.
hangouts.
It's making me cringe a little bit, but there it is.
I mean, I understand completely because your answers don't really make sense unless you've like experienced it firsthand. Otherwise, it just sounds like I try to explain it to other people, and it's like I have no idea what you're talking about. And it's like, okay, I'll just stop. Yeah.
Enrique, how do you feel when you're playing music? Do you sort of like, does your state sort of change? Do you feel like you're doing an NI thing, or like, how do you feel?
For me, it's like if I'm playing someone else's stuff, I don't. There's no. It's memorization. It's not. I'm detached, basically. But if I recreate what's in my head, like I'm playing what I'm hearing, then that's more coming from me. And then the how do I say, it's almost like the music tells me how I feel. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's it's not incredibly obvious to me how I feel about things. So that's one way for me to access that.
Bradley, if you want to ask about that, be my guest.
Um, I don't really want to ask about it, but I am very much of the opinion that there's something about music that you just don't have to explain. It's just enough that it exists. So I mean, there's obviously a reason that that music comes from a place that can't be expressed with words. So um, personally, I'm very much of the opinion that you can sometimes just let music speak for itself. And I mean, you hear me go on a lot about like music. What does it mean? And I think it means different things to different people. Assuming that there's nothing associated with music and it's just like no movie or no song associated with it, then it's just something that you have to feel and have a instinctive understanding about. And there's basically no wrong answer. It's just something that you put out into the world and then receive it, which has there are like quote the rules of music unquote, but in terms of like what makes good music and especially what makes a good melody, like no one knows. And
agree.
that sort of like it makes sense, but we're completely clueless about it. Aspect of music is I mean it's what makes music so worthwhile, and also what makes it so frustrating because um you're being expected to you know, like professional musicians are expected to convey things that they aren't fully in control of, because you can like sort of acquire technique and you can practice enough to where you can present music coherently, but there's just some element of the unknown about it, which is sort of goes what Enrique is saying about like it sounds stupid to talk about, but you just can't really do anything else besides try to convey. When someone's asking you to explain it, it's like the only thing you can do is like try to say it the best you can, and hope that you're doing it justice, which I never seem to be able to do. So
Yeah,
you shouldn't feel bad about sounding like a complete idiot because I've done that and so much worse.
it's the best answer I could give to that question. It feels accurate too. It's
Right.
an
I think
experience.
it is accurate. I think that's pretty much as accurate as you can get it without fully breaking it down into all of the. I mean, there's like a bunch of like auditory science and math that can go into it too, but you know, who wants to hear about that? So, anyway, that's my sort of ramble.
It's good. Well, instead of coming back to this when we do SE, we might as well sort of do it in like the music section, and then so I'm willing to adapt like the plan and just go with what's coming up. So, a couple of the things that you mentioned there, Enrique. Have you been reading about NLP?
I have not studied it.
Because I remember last time you said you'd look into it. It's just that when you said auditory representation, I thought you'd looked at the representation systems. And it's interesting what you said there about when you're playing somebody else's music, you sort of feel detached from it, sort of disassociated. But when you're playing your own music, you feel attached. And so you're almost associated with it. Now, is this like going into a little bit of ESFP mode where it's like when it's your own music, is that a little bit of FI, a little bit more of you, and then the SE of being like in the moment, in the zone?
For sure. I would agree with that. It's like I feel like I'm aligning with myself in a way that, you know, almost like it feels like I'm discovering a part of myself that I didn't know is there, or that maybe perhaps I was repressing.
I'll just say that Dario did something about him learning to play the guitar. Bradley, have you got is anything like come into your mind based on what Enrique's just said?
I mean, yeah, basically it is like a language. Music is the language that and just like any other language, it's I mean, just like a language, there like a certain rule to it, but also it's sort of goes what I was saying before, is that it's something in the human subconscious that can't also be explained. So I mean, it's but basically I can't really say anything without like repeating what I said before, but just goes more about, you know, the human condition and human self-expression. Unless you had something more specifically wanted me to talk about what he said, but
Actually, I wanted to add something else too before I forget. I've run into this situation quite a bit where I hear a piece in my head, but I'm not. It's above my skill level.
yeah.
And then I can't to me, it's maybe to other people it's like, oh man, that sounds nice, but I just can't play it. But to me, it's like I can't access that part of myself. Like I don't. There's a feeling behind that I'm not gonna know about until I play it. It's very strange, I know. But so then what I do is I go and I try and practice the technique, practice. That way I can finally play it and access whatever was
Ah,
behind that. So
this is
Yeah.
fascinating to me.
I think to relate it to Jungian functions, I think there's some element of NI involved here. Um, Granted, it's not a valued function for me, but I do get the sense of my brain wants to do things that I don't know how to do, and I mean, it happens. It happens with lots of things, but it's very frustrating in general with music because I hear it perfectly in my mind, but I don't know how to reproduce the sounds by myself. Or I also compose music sometimes, and I don't know how to even reproduce like a version of it to like show to someone to get them how to play it. So it's just like the brain is working faster than the brain has images and sounds that you can't quite manifest, which to me sounds like an I.
I'll just do a little bit of an NLP. Certain NLP techniques might help both of you with sort of accessing these sort of like sensory representations and things associated with it. And somebody might have written a book on NLP and music, and maybe like that. Dario thinks that there is some relationship. Well, he thinks there is a relationship between representational system and type. It's just weird because I think that the representational systems are like the least solid part of NLP. I'll just say here that do you think that music might be a way for the NiTx, so Socionics ILI and Kersey INTJ, as a way to sort of like express themselves?
it certainly is for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's limited to type because I mean that there's certain, without getting too much into it, there are certain tendencies that that are related to perceiving functions. So NISC, SI, and NE that are related to how people write music
Go
or
on,
how
we need to
people
hear
like.
this.
Uh, it's hard to explain it. It's easier to like show people examples, but basically, in any music, there's a lot of trans-contextual type music that where you quickly jump from one key to another, and with SI music, it's generally just like in one key, and it follows like standard key modulation procedures found in like if you think of like Mozart or like Beethoven, it sounds a lot like how you can predict where the music's going because the patterns are so repetitive. With SE music, it's like lots of virtuosic playing. So you know, all the crazy like soloists who have like super like 3 minute long solos, not just in classical music. Like if you think about like guitar solos, there's probably some element of SE involved there.
Is there a lot of that in jazz?
Yeah.
Right.
What jazz is jazz, it varies because jazz can be very like formulaic and procedural, or it can be very freeform. So it depends on the
Yeah.
sort of jazz. NI music is definitely the hardest one to articulate what's going on because it's sort of like there's it really is like subconscious music because there's like the standard music and then there's something floating above it normally, or it's normally something that's happening simultaneously to where there's a very standard melody in the background and like something that sounds completely weird and foreign like above it. It is typically like registerly. The notes are typically higher, and it's almost like subliminal as to sometimes it's like super obvious it's going on, other times it's just sort of like floating in the background and you can sort of like feel that it's going on, but you can't really pinpoint what's going on. I wish I could cite examples of like all four, but I can't really think of many well-known ones. But there is definitely difference in how music is presented based on what functions you're comfortable or what information elements you're comfortable presenting.
Yeah, and I mean we're talking about music, right? But I think other ILIs can find other ways of expressing themselves or expressing their FI, maybe through writing, maybe through like there's endless different ways. I mean, for me it's playing guitar. For me it's music, but for other ILIs it may be different.
Yeah. I think I have a good friend who's of ILI, and I think he uses like video game design and then also coding as well as his expressive outlets.
Do you think? I mean, theoretically, I mean, if we were to go on the theory, ILI has got this combination of this like weird NI thing plus FE break. So it's like they've got this thing that's really hard to articulate, and they also have problems with being articulate because they don't really feel a need to articulate it, really, because that's part of the FE break. Well, why should I explain this? This is private to me. This is my weirdness, right? So I'm just wondering, Bradley, do you reckon that because they don't want to like talk about it, that there might be other ways and it might come through non-linguistically? This sort of the NI of like INTJ, where it's like you have to be, whereas with INFJ that it might more come out in their language, like their sort of NFE language that will sound NI, whereas it seems that ILIs tend to like, they don't want to talk in NI apart from, well, this might happen and this. So do you think like the more of the weirdy parts of NI sort of can come through in ways like this in the music and other things?
Yes, yeah, definitely. Like I think people, at least in art, people have like an explicit understanding of that it can be a little bit weird, and because people generally associate NI with like weirdness. I'm trying to be polite. Like I'm not saying, I'm not trying to like be defamatory towards NI or people who use it a lot, but if you are to present it as it is, it's not necessarily received in a very flattering way. So I think NI can be expressed in various ways, but especially in art, you can sort of say what's on your mind, NI wise, and sort of people accept it because it's more commonplace. To like symbolic symbolism in general is more commonplace in art, so it's less scrutinized for quote weirdness.
Yeah, because I was just thinking about one of the differences between IEI, so NI effects, and NITx. ILI is just that.
You're saying like how does it relate to like withholding? And
Well, it's. I just
break?
think that the IEI is more likely to talk about it, the sort of the things that they think about that might be NI related, whereas you've got ILI, which is an NT, and they might see the NI stuff as irrational. It's like, oh, this isn't logical, and they don't really want to talk about it because it might seem, well, it's not NT first, it's not rational, it's not scientific, it's this weird thing in the background of a feeling of.
I think I don't think this is related to art or expression in that sense, but I do think that it depends on how close you are to like an INTJ as to how much of the NI they're willing to share with you.
Yeah.
I think in day to day, most day to day conversations and just like relating to other people, it doesn't really come up that much. I don't really know. I haven't known an INFJ for a long time, like in outside of the internet. Like there was one I was sort of close to in high school, but that was like ages ago. So I don't really have a big frame of reference to compare it to, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, usually NI, the way I see it expressed in NiTx and TENX, so Kersey INTJ and ENTJ, the coordinators, is it's expressed via their TE. It's like, this might happen, I'll plan for this and do this. So it's like the way they plan into the future. And also, what I read something very interesting in the Kersey INTJ, and that was about how they can adapt their way to the goal. So an SJ and an NJ might, they can like plan into the future, but for an SJ, if the plan goes awry, it's like they've got a problem where it's like maybe like the NJs, especially the NTJs, have sort of like an implicit feeling of how to adapt to still get to the goal. Do you think that's the case, both of you?
Oh, okay. This is. Both
Oh yeah, I'll
of
let you. So who wants to go first? You, Bradley, or Enrique?
Probably Enrique. Enrique can go first.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, I'm able to usually, more often than not, I can identify where anomalies might happen in the plan.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if it happens, it's not a surprise. Whereas, you know, how perhaps how you mentioned the SJs may plan, it's you know, it's not, it's, they're not expecting any anomalies in the plan.
Yeah.
Whereas you know, I mean, I'm speaking for myself. I almost always expect certain parts of the plan to go astray or to go wrong, and then I start thinking about, okay, well, if it goes wrong in this manner, I do this. If it goes wrong in that manner, I do that. So it's yeah, it's a non-event, really.
Yeah. So we've looked at this before when we looked at NI, but I do think that the way the Kersey NTJs are using TE is going to be bound up with their NI. It's going to be bound up with the strategic thinking. And
Yeah.
so
It's TE in service of NI.
yeah, especially and that's pretty much the difference, where it's ILI has more of a focus on the contingencies and how things can go wrong. And in Socionics, ILI is negativist. So their filter is going away from where things can go wrong, minimizing the negative. And that matches up with the charges. So that's something that's, so I'll put that in here, NI minus, the serial order thing. Whereas ENTJ, they're looking to maximize opportunities in the future. So a little bit of a difference there, that ENTJ is a lot more positive. And also, if ENTJ fails, it's like they're more likely to like pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and move on to the next project. And I think what helps with that is that ENTJs don't spend as long on a project as INTJ, as ILI. Do you think that's fair to say, Enrique?
I'd say so, yes. I would agree with that.
So, and these things come through, and it's also some stuff like that in the Linda Bounds interaction styles, where the in-charge types, ESTP, ESTJ, ENTJ, and ENFJ are more likely to act quickly, be assertive, go forward, take charge. And that's what originally it was called, take charge, but apparently the people in the corporate environments didn't like take charge, and so they changed it to in charge. So, do you agree with all this stuff about serial order?
Which part do you want me to read? The whole thing?
Well, yeah, just a bit in NTJ, it's sort of like from order and then to disaster.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, you've probably encountered some ENTJs in your field. Do you think they do think more in terms of hierarchy and you more in terms of serial order?
Yeah, for me, once I determine the order of things, I rarely change it. If because I take into account a lot of things. I would say in just overall working with other people, I tend to move the slowest, but I would say that my success rate is higher.
Right.
It's kind of a give and take. I've seen people make their plans rather quickly, and they fail more often, but they also get back on their feet quicker.
That's me.
Yes. Yeah, this is a good point for you to come in, as when you finish making your point, Enrique, Rachel can come in and sort of tell us how she thinks she uses TE.
Yeah, I mean, I can, sometimes I'm impressed when I see people, do things really fast and it actually works out, and I'm just like, wow, that's interesting. You didn't even think about all the possible scenarios, but you got it done, great. But when it fails, it's like, should have thought of this, should have thought of that. So I think there's a place for both in the corporate world and in life in general. So they're both needed. Just got to know when to use what type of strategy, and then you put the proper person that naturally applies that strategy. My take on it, at least.
I'll just ask Sana a quick question, because you identify with the type that's TE break, and Enrique was talking about getting the steps right. Is that the problem for you, getting the order of the steps right, or is it? Where do you think the area of trouble is for you in TE break? Or are you going to say, well, if I knew, I wouldn't be TE break then? What's?
I don't think I have a problem with steps in general, but my steps are probably more vague than his. Like, I have a general idea of where I'm going, but I don't have them pre-planned in detail.
Right. Does also, in your case, does the TE stuff sort of like leave you cold?
What do you mean?
Well, it's sort of like, it's like you literally don't like it. More, it's not so much a case of, it's sort of maybe a combo of not being good at it, but also not liking the process and the function in itself, because it sort of conflicts with ethic.
Yeah, when it comes to being efficient and all that, I don't like doing it. I feel like it's incredibly draining. But I do appreciate other people that can do it. Like, I see the value, I just can't seem to get into the mode and do it.
Don't forget to ask Rachel.
Yes, good point, Bradley. So, Rachel, what do you think about all this TE stuff?
For me, I think maybe having it as my base function, and this might be why it was so hard to realize that I could be a TE dominant for a while, because to me it's so automatic. It's like I have so many different thoughts and ideas of how to do things all the time, and I think that I'm doing it so much where I'm trying something and it's not working, and I'm trying something and it's not working. I mean, that's the norm, is I'm trying something and it doesn't work more than it does, I guess.
Wait a minute, you're supposed to be E3. You're not supposed to let people know about your failure rate. You're supposed to say, oh, it always works.
This is true. No, and I think that, I'm just getting to a point in my life where I'm realizing that, because I'm 28 and I'm thinking about where I'm going to go in my career. I'm still not clear, because I have like a big vision of what I want in business. but it's not specific. And I think for me, I don't know.
I'll just add a little bit of theory.
Okay.
With ENTJs, they've got this intuition of ideas, extroverted intuition, which is sort of feeding the TE. As you were saying there, you're coming up with ideas all the while, but they're all filtered through TE.
Yeah. And I think what's thrown me off and made it hard for me in the real world, like in the corporate world, is that I've done psychedelics and I've had different states of consciousness. And now, now I have all these ideas of what things should be that are also based on like things that I realized in like altered states of mind. You know, this is like 5 years ago, but I know it still affects me. I was not the same after this happened. So
well, I mean, if I don't follow up on this, someone will slap me. What kind of profound realizations did you have?
Well, I don't know if you know much about psychedelic substances, but you realize a lot of things about a lot of things being pointless. Like a lot of things I was pursuing for egotistical reasons weren't actually things that would be fulfilling or would even have a real impact in the world, because so much is so fleeting. So it just makes you think of all these deep things, and it's like, well then, okay, what am I really trying to do? Because I know that I have the ENTJ, like I have a vision for the world. I want to contribute to the world in a big way, in some way that can change things on a larger scale. And so it's just been this process of like trying to figure out how I can best do that and what a good path is, and trying to plan out the steps. But I don't know if that makes me different from other ENTJs, because I'm pretty willing to admit that I don't have like a planned out path into the future. It's kind of spontaneously informed by stuff that happens in the moment, and I think that might happen with my NE, because I want to stay flexible to whatever opportunities come about. I mean, I've surrounded myself with a lot of people that have a lot of knowledge and skills that are related to the sort of field that I would want to get involved in the future, which is I would want to start some kind of business that's like a healing wellness center, working with a lot of different it's like I want to work with sort of alternative medicine people, but I want to bring it closer to mainstream science as well. Because I have a lot of friends I have psychologists, a psychologist friend, I have massage therapists, I know chiropractors. So I'm kind of thinking of some kind of like holistic, not holistic in the alternative pseudoscience sense, but like I want to have some kind of healing center or place that people can go to for a retreat, because I've had health problems throughout my life, and so I've just became really interested in this. But as a business, because I think as we go forward into the future, because we have such an overstressed society, I think there's going to need to be places people can go to fully relax, and then have all different like things kind of going on, like massage and nutritionists there, maybe a retreat where there's food made for you. I don't know. I have a lot of different ideas about this.
Right.
It'd
So
be too much to go into. So anyway,
so
that's
just
my general idea, and I've had that for years, but I don't know exactly how to make it happen yet.
Right, I've made some bullet points. So what you'll hear there, folks, is how can, and you probably might be thinking, the socionics people, how can an LIE say all these things about SI? Well, that's the weird thing about the break function, is that people can sort of overcompensate in that area. So Alina Ames, ESFJ, ESE Resembler will plan rigidly into the future, 6 months ahead. So maybe, and in your case, because you've had these problems, you sort of looked at yourself and trying to like make sure you get this area right. So that's why the break function can be quite ironic.
Well, and I think it's a huge source of frustration for me. I don't like that I have to focus on SI. It is draining, but it's held me back in life, in my opinion. It's held me back because I was so sick for 3 years, just getting better a couple years ago. I mean, I was so sick that every day was a blur, and it was hard to really get anything done. So I mean, it was just, yeah, for me, it was a necessity to focus on it. Maybe not all ENTJs ever get really sick. And
Right. What you're saying there about SE and being adaptable, you've got launcher, so the tertiary SE, and Dario's got it immersing yourself in present context and being tactical. And so that can, so I suppose ENTJs, when they're in sort of adverse conditions, that can like stimulate them to overcome obstacles because they've got a bit of that SP mindset in them, but it's like directed towards strategic objectives. Also in Kersey, the NTJs and the STPs are adaptive enterprises. So they're proactive, going towards goals. In the STP case, they tend to be more tactical goals, more nearer, not as far into the future. And they're willing to use adaptive means to get there. So given you're adaptive and got the TE, you're okay with being flexible.
yeah.
The thing that you mentioned that was very, very interesting, what were the things that you were pursuing that you saw as egotistical?
Well, I mean, growing up, going through high school and getting into college, I was pretty sure that I was just going to take a track of working for some ad agency, doing marketing for some corporate office or marketing department of some corporation. And I mean, I just had this pretty clear idea that, well, that's what I'll do because it fits my strengths. I'll make money. I'm thinking about making money, you know, just stuff like that, like practical stuff. But it's like, but is this even going to be, it's like, is this really going to work? And then when I was getting sick, it was like, well, this isn't going to work. This track that I wanted to take isn't possible because I don't have the energy now to, because being in the marketing field takes like a great deal of energy. I mean, you got to be on, like mentally you have to be on. And because I lost my mental energy during the period of time, I was going through a lot of stressful family events as well, which really affected me. But yeah, so not having that mental energy just kind of derailed things. And I don't know, I just realized that you can't the egotistical part was thinking that I would be able to completely or plan out my future or make exactly what I want happen. I mean, I realized that you can't do that. Nobody gets to do that.
I would just say that without getting political, it is going to depend upon the environment around you as to how easy it is to gain success through business reasons, like how many obstacles are there.
Right. And I realized, I have a lot of obstacles that a lot of people in my major, other advertising students, let's see. So the richer students who came from wealthier families, they were able to afford taking unpaid internships. So basically, in order to get the experience, you had to take unpaid work. And so they were ahead. And I knew that. I couldn't afford to do that because I didn't come from a wealthy family.
Oh, and I'll just say something. Because of minimum wage laws, you're sort of stuck between two extremes of one, an internship where you'd not paid anything, and then one where you paid the minimum wage. So you can't go in between that, which would actually help poorer students who can't afford to do an unpaid internship. Because at least they would get enough to get by on.
There would be something, but those were, I mean, it was pretty much all unpaid in my path, in my career field, so.
There we go. So these are things that are sort of outside typology that can be things that can get in someone's way. And I'll just give folks a small example of what would happen, say in about the year 1900, where someone could start a business. They literally had to pay no taxes because the only taxes were on tariffs. And so it was a lot easier for someone to start a business when they didn't have to keep any accounts. So someone could be like a plumber, do plumbing, and very easily. So there's all these little obstacles can get in the way of the TE.
Yeah, I've had many obstacles. And I think I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have that SE launcher or that ability to be like really uncomfortable with my surroundings or not having power over and wanting to have control and being motivated to think up solutions to get outside so I could at least get ahead and have more potential opportunities. I mean,
So
that's
yeah, go on.
Right.
well, that's it. That's it.
I have a question. I'm just curious. So, being that I'm ILI and I have um, TE in the second position, which basically means that I have conscious control over it. I can engage it and disengage it at will. I mean, usually I'm engaging it, but if I want to relax from it, I can. So from being that you have it as a first function, how do you experience like just it being it on?
Well, I
Like-
mean, since I was a kid, I guess, I always knew I was weird because it was like being around other people, like, especially women, especially girls. I'm like, why do I always have this internal like commentary or like this? I knew my mind was always active and looking for the next thing to do, which wasn't something that most girls my age were thinking of. I mean, I don't know. It's always on. I'm one of those people that it's hard to relax, and it fits with the SI break, I think, in the INTJ, because my mind just doesn't stop. It doesn't. It goes by itself. I mean, I really can't turn it off.
Do other people that say don't have a TE as high as you, or perhaps in the third or fourth positions, do they appear like lazy to you?
Not necessarily. I mean, actually, I envy it in some ways. It'd be nice. It'd be nice to be able to just kind of like relax and look at focus on other aspects of life rather than just this constant like.
I think you do that. I mean, the outdoor activities that you've told me about, they do tend to be like. Do you feel like that can be a way to relax you?
Oh yeah,
outdoor
exactly.
stuff.
That's the weird part about me is I relax through pushing my body and doing things outdoors or traveling or things like that. Yeah,
Wow.
because it helps my mind to kind of get out of the way so that at least I get a break from my mind. But
That's-
not really. I mean, it doesn't ever really go away. And so, yeah, with me, the NI is my creative, so I can turn that off. Like, I don't have to see the deeper underlying, I don't have to see the hidden behind the scenes. I can if I want to, but I can turn that off. So maybe that's different as opposed to the ILI who always kind of sees the behind the scenes and that.
Even if we don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just
Right.
remind the audience that when Rachel says creative, that's in the Model A terminology.
Oh, in the Model A.
Victor switched it around. So it's still the auxiliary NI for Rachel, because TENI in terms
Right.
of
So this
strong
is
value function.
demonstrative.
Pardon?
And Model G. This is demonstrative and Model
Yeah,
G.
demonstrative in Model G. So you can see there the difference in energy level between NiTx and TENX. Big difference in energy level. So that can be one way to tell the difference between the type. So if you're somebody who thinks you resemble more Kersey INTJ or ILI because you don't talk to people much, but you get a load of stuff done and you're very active, then you might be more LIE. Although Enrique has talked about he has his moments where he will do the handball thing. So how similar, Enrique, is your experience when you're playing handball to when you're playing the guitar? In terms of your state?
Yeah, handball is more like, well, for those that don't know, it's like racquetball without the racket. So you're hitting the ball against the wall with your hand. It's very popular in New York, and so for me, it's one of the few ways that I know that I can shut off my NI or get a break from just constantly being in my head and being more in the moment. And just like how Rachel said, the ways that for me to get out of my head always involves some kind of crazy physical activity. You know, I need to like exert myself out in the world in order to get out of my head. So in terms of comparing playing handball and playing guitar, they're two totally different experiences for me, because guitar is more about trying to figure out how I feel about things,
Right.
whereas
Yeah.
playing handball is more about it's like meditation. It's yeah,
You
it's
know,
it's getting a
Think-
break from constantly analyzing things. You know, whatever I look at, I just naturally analyze it, and sometimes you need a break. So yeah, that's what handball is for me.
Yeah, go on, Rachel. I think you want
Oh, I
to
was just gonna say it's interesting, given like just our positions with SE, because the INTJ, I'm just getting the impression like, well, with handball, I mean that's a little more active and a little faster pace. Like to me, that's a higher energy thing. Whereas I think I go towards hiking because it's a sustained kind of slower pace, but I can exert myself, but I don't have to be so focused on it because I have the launcher SE, which is in like the pessimum energy
Yeah.
side.
It's it's a little bit weird that, because it's like if it's from the outside, then you have energy for it. It's like you can't really supply it yourself.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think I go towards like putting myself in a certain external situation, like
Yeah.
a new place to explore, because then that stimulates me to want to keep going forward, to keep exploring it. But I need that
Yeah.
outside motivation, where it seems like for the INTJ, it's a little more internal, that they're deciding that they want to do the SE thing. I don't know if I'm describing it.
It's a good point.
I think it's like a balancing act, right? Because I mean, I'll speak for myself. For me, I'm in my head so much. I don't know. It's I focus all my energy on all this analysis and all this calculating and work, and so when it's time to give myself a break, it's I no longer look like a typical INTJ at that point, because I'm
Right.
it's this balancing act. So there's like a lot of mental energy, and now it's like this I'll take like the whole Sunday, for example, and play handball the whole day, and move around the court like a lunatic trying to catch this damn ball.
Right.
And, perhaps people watching me at that moment, maybe they think I prefer SE. But
yeah, that's how I picture it with an INTJ. Like if someone saw you that day, they wouldn't know necessarily.
Yeah, they would not think at all.
Yeah. I'll just there's a couple of NLP. You mentioned them about wanting to get outside your head. There's a couple of NI. I've mentioned this in other hangouts, but I'm mentioning it again because it's quite interesting. There's a couple of NLP concepts that relate to NI and SE. So SE you can sort of look at in two ways. So it's like uptime, where you're completely in your five senses. You're not inside your head. And also you're in time, in like you're in the present moment. So when you're playing the guitar, you're in the present moment, and probably the FI is coming through as well. And I'll ask Bradley about that in a moment, about when you said, Enrique, about you use the guitar to sort of work out how you feel about things. And I wonder if Bradley's noticed something similar. So I'll get to him in a moment. So you got and then the opposite of that, so sort of the NI, there's two sort of aspects to NI generally, what we hear from people. One is the thing where they really go internal, almost into the unconscious, and sometimes what you find with the NI DOMs is they do try to they access quite a bit of stuff in their dreams. So with HR Giga, he said that he painted the stuff that he dreamt in night terrors. So there's the sort of the unconscious aspect of downtime going into like really inner focus, the most inner focused of all the types, and even more inner focused than SI, because it sort of goes beyond the sensory image. And a lot of the sensory image within SI is going through memories, but this is going beyond that into imagination and archetypal images. So you've got that, but then there's also the aspect of NI, which is like seeing how things will develop, and the timing aspect, and it working with the TE. So that's, and then SE being opposite, in the moment, and all the senses outwards. Is that a fair distinction, Enrique?
I would say so. Yeah, because I'm trying to think of my mental state when I'm playing handball. There's no so I'm totally immersed in the moment.
Yeah.
That ball is coming at you so fast that there's no time to think. You think it'll probably hit you in the face or something.
Right.
You know?
That's where you get a holiday from your NI. And Dario is the same thing with the way he writes about it, the extroverted sensing, and you, the way you talked about it. So Bradley, I'll go back to you. When Enrique said that thing about playing the guitar, it helps him to access his feelings. Have you got any thoughts or experiences about that, Bradley?
Not really. To me, it's like sort of like it's outside of like playing, like when I'm playing an instrument for myself with no one around, because I do play in groups sometimes, and it's like a completely different experience. But when I'm playing it myself, it's sort of like a stress release. So for me, it's not so much like an exploration of feelings. It's just sort of like I have all this just, I guess, life stuff that's sort of like building up, and I sort of like know it's there, and it's sort of like once I get to a position to be behind an instrument, I just sort of like because for the clarinet you have to literally provide air, so it's sort of like when I exhale through my through the clarinet, it's almost like a lot of stress just gets released at that moment. So sometimes emotions are like very much a part of it, sometimes they're not. But I'd say whenever I'm doing it for myself, it's mostly stress release in terms of just like expressing myself.
Yeah.
And then there are also some other things that involve like more creativity and more deliberate planning. It used to be that before I got really interested into music, it used to be something I could do recreationally, but I've since heavily intellectualized the process, so I almost let my brain get in the way too much. So now it's like I have to consciously separate my mind from music sometimes. That's like a different thing. In terms of like and specifically about how do I feel like I already listened to music that perfectly conceptualized my feelings. So it used to be maybe before I found enough music which could encapsulate my and I use feelings in quotations because when I say feeling, I don't necessarily mean emotion specifically. Sometimes I mean like impression or just like general mood. So it's basically like a huge amount of feelings into it, and I think I found music which perfectly can encapsulate certain feeling states. So I'm very much content just to like have music in my ears, and then sort of like memorize the music, and like I can sort of like play it back to myself. I think that could be something to do with SI, not in the socionic sense, but in the MBTI sense.
Yeah, but how does that make you feel though, Bradley, when you play it back? Do you think it might get into like comfort sensor?
Possibly, but like on some level, like it's not like the full like 9 yards of like Enneagram self-preservation where you have to like feel good. But I do definitely feel relatively more comfortable when I have music going on. So,
because part of the theory for launch at SI in Victor's LII model is they sort of like need to feel comfortable in order to do their work first.
I am sort of have mixed feelings. I mean, I can see what he means about that, but also,
I suppose their best work, shall we say.
exactly the best way, because you can't always be comfortable all the time. So I do find it very easy to work when I'm comfortable, but I can rarely get. I do very much agree with them. You need someone else to make you comfortable, which is part of Lancer SI.
Oh, that makes sense with INTPs I've known. Yeah, they respond well when someone else kind of, well, like an ESFJ type or someone that can kind of, well, you need this. I think you need some water right now. Like just hands you a glass of water.
Any more funny examples, Rachel, of these moments that you've seen between ESFJ and INTP?
Well, I think my younger brother's an INTP. So, and my mom's an ESFJ, and she would just always, I mean, well into way past the time she should have been reminding him, like, you know, well, have you gone up? And I don't know. He'd just be like, oh, I don't feel very good. It's like, well, have you, like, you know, why don't you try taking a walk? Or, oh, and he'd pretty much be like, oh, yeah, okay, well, yeah. I don't know. He would just respond pretty well to the things she would say, and it would usually be like common sense things to try to help him be more comfortable.
Yeah, because
she would pretty much always ask, well, are you drinking water? Like, that was a pretty regular thing.
Yeah, because I like the impression that you do of your mother. It's like extremely jolly organizer.
Well, that's how she is. It's kind of scary. I'm like some kind of like happy robot. Scary to me. I'm sure it's, you know, this is my bias.
Right. So Enrique, for Enrique and Rachel, so what about that bit in the middle where it talks about NTJs? So this is sort of Kurz's version of, it's not necessarily what the functions are, but it seems to be what we would say when we see them operate. It's like, oh, well, they seem to be using quite a bit of strategic long-range thinking there, and it's sort of practically business-based. So does that ring true for you? So it's the paragraph that starts now on coordinators. So that's the NTJs.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Determining.
And of course, in this example, he's relating it to specific social roles, so intelligent roles, and so it makes it more solid.
Steps that are required. Well, yeah, I mean, whenever there's a goal, you have to break it down into clearly defined tasks in which you allocate the adequate resources to accomplish those tasks. And you want to do it in an efficient and effective manner. That way you actually reach the goal, the long-term goal. So, you know, it has to be planned properly. And this whole thing it says about hierarchy. Let's see here. Words, hierarchy, layers, echelons. Yeah, I mean, that rings true for me, for sure. Yeah. I'm curious to see what Rachel, thanks.
Yeah, I'll just say something, Rachel. So there are a few. Sometimes there are differences with SE when it comes to males and females. Although you do see the females who are like, "Whoa, very ESTP female." But yeah. So I'd like you to comment on this, Rachel, and then there'll be a little bit something else where I'm thinking that maybe the plans for ILI, they're more focused on themselves, whereas ENTJ, being an in-charge type, it's like, I have this plan and you need to do this and you need to do that to get to a goal.
And it doesn't necessarily even happen till I start to see that I actually have the people and the resources around me to where this is actually even going to be possible. So I don't necessarily have my own plan as much as an INTJ has, I think. I've dated an INTJ. I was actually engaged to an INTJ. I'm very close to one still. I mean, he's still a very close friend. And for him, he's always had his own business, his own, what he's working on. And I mean, it's like always been this like somewhat linear trajectory. Whereas for me, what I'm doing, I mean, I've moved around a lot in my life. So it's like I constantly have to change what I'm doing based on what resources are available, what people I have around me. So, I mean, I start to do that TE stuff once you put me in a situation where I start seeing like, okay, I mean, I have a general vision. It's kind of hard to describe. Like I have my vision for the world and I don't know. I kind of got off topic or let me see. We're talking about.
Yeah, just a quick thing. When you mentioned vision for the world, do you think in the Enneagram you might be 3-wing too? Or at least have strong access to it?
Yeah, I tested pretty balanced. Like balance between the wings. So
I'll just ask you about this before we get on to extroverted. So do you relate to this bit, this NTJ stuff?
Yeah, I'm just saying that for me, I think that it's not so. It is linear, but it's like it's still based on like the external.
Yeah.
Like I can't just sit here and write down on a pad of paper all this, like organize it. I would love to, but it's going to depend on a lot of people and a lot of other factors.
Right. Yeah. So the focus is external dynamic changes. Plus, also ENTJ is sort of enlivened by that with the extroverted sensing. Oh, got to adapt.
Yeah.
Overcome these challenges, and overcoming the challenges will like boost the self-image if there were a bit of E3 in there.
Totally.
So.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this is what I usually do, folks, is I adapt the hangout to whoever's in it. So I think it's gone really well. So I like that music section. So we can sort of say for you both, we got this sort of like, yeah, we'll have a look at the various definitions of SE and whether socionics has gone a little bit too far or not. Do you both relate to that? Do you relate? Go with Enrique. Do you relate to that stuff in the sensing? Would you like a little bit more of it?
Yeah, as much as I could get.
Ooh.
I'm how do I say? I find myself, especially when I'm in front of something that is like really powerful. It's very I don't know. It's just nice.
So like a certain ILI who I won't mention, have you got the hots for SE?
Yeah, I see myself, and this is 1D. You know, I've told you this before. I don't know how smart it is, but I'm gonna do it. I want to go cage diving with great white sharks. Yeah.
Make sure the bars are close together, because I once saw one where they were about that wide and it got through and it nips the woman. I thought, well, what do you expect? It was a old cage and it was about that wide.
Like it's like that creature is just so powerful. I don't know. I want to be in front of it. It's Weird.
Rachel, are you like that or not quite as much?
No, I mean, for me, I think my relationship like that would be more with FI.
Interesting. Go on.
I like being in front, you know, like, well, I mean, I have the SE. I like that too. Maybe just not to that extent. The shark, I'm like, you know,
Bad idea.
pass. Like, I'm good. I just go hike to, I'll climb on top of a mountain and take in the view, and that gives me that sense of that, yeah, I don't know,
That could also
there's
be
so
ironic.
much to take in at once when you have that view.
That also
And I-
might be a developmental point of thing of like you sort of like having an ironic use of SI where you sort of know you've had the problem in this area and you try hard to like get some balance in that area, because that can happen.
Yeah, so like for me, climbing mountains, because I live in Olympia, Washington, next to Olympic National Forest, and yeah, it gives me a sense of achievement. Like, well, obviously I've bettered my health enough to be able to handle climbing a mountain, and so I feel like a personal achievement. But at the same time, it's not all about me. I'm really actually like, I'm wanting to just kind of take in the view and the experience itself and to appreciate the nature. So, but yeah, it is that kind of feeling of achievement that I like. Whereas it sounds more like for the INTJ, it's not necessarily like you need to achieve something. Maybe you just, I mean, it sounds like you just enjoy being in the presence of that power.
Yeah,
So-
like when you said Washington, the first thing I thought was grizzly bears.
I haven't seen any. They're in like they're closer to Canada. So I'm a little too far south for them, but
Yeah, I usually quip that the SE types like to wrestle a bear.
wish
I did
could
enjoy watching The Crocodile Hunter when I was a kid.
at all.
I
Come on,
like
Bradley.
watching.
What are you saying, Bradley?
I just said I wish I could do any of these like at all.
Yeah. Oh, you wish you. Well, we're a little bit better at it, but so I have this thing that sometimes it amuses me when ILI resemblers think that they're eights. So Enrique, when you read like the 8 profiles, you're like, oh, I wish I was this.
Yeah. Well, ironically, according to my results, 8 is the second strongest. I mean, I'm a core 1, but 8 was the second strongest. So I guess in certain situations, it may come out. But when I do read it, it does sound pretty awesome.
Do you think that you're a 5? Doesn't 5 have a connecting line to 8? Maybe you're a 5 mental type.
Well, my tri-type is 153.
Oh,
So-
yeah, there you go. That's the same as my ex, INTJ, as well. Yeah. He has a strong 8 too, and I think it might be because of the 5 connection.
Right. So we all pretty much know what TE is. So basically, it's very similar in Socionics to what it is in MBTI. So we can concentrate on the SE differences. So here is a song that I think is like, it's almost like an ode to extroverted sensor. So you can sort of read through it and see what you think of it. So basically what happened was, it's at the end of Transformers, the cartoon in 86, and it's like an ode to it's just sort of like SP kind of hero. I know he transforms into a car, but it's still an SP. What's he called? He even called Hot Rod. I mean, that's like a really ESTP name, Hot Rod. And he becomes more responsible and he develops, and this is like an ode to Hot Rod and his heroism. And I just thought it was very like SE. So Enrique, would you like to have the touch and have the power?
I will have the touch and the power.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we can go through this, and I can ask you if you both would like this kind of song to be written about you.
So like you're walking down the street and like people are singing to you.
Yeah, but to be sort of thought of as a sort of fantasy, like to have these qualities.
I can see the eye of the storm. I like when I used to work at Trader Joe's, it's about like 66 employees, but during the day maybe like 30 or 40. But the stores run like a ship. The store owners called the captain, and then your supervisors are called mates, and you have to ring bells when you need assistance, and things get really crazy and chaotic. And I always felt like I just saw that line about the eye of the storm, and it's like, I'm just that cool, collected person where all the chaos like goes. I mean, I would like to see myself that way. I'm definitely not always in that control that I think I am.
I mean, when you read this, it's like it's definitely talking about like an SLE type.
Yeah, that would be totally.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Right. So it looks like
I would
both
like
of
to
you.
be that, but I'm just a little too awkward.
Right. So, Sana, you've seen these lyrics. Is this sort of like the kind of guy you'd like, or sort of like this kind of stuff, or is it a little bit too cliched, or what do you reckon?
Well, it's a little bit well, so over the top that it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, SE valuing is definitely there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just making sure that everything's right. I'll just move it up a bit. You never bend, you never break. You're a fighter.
That's right.
All that backs to the wall stuff. There we go. Right, there we go. Standing your ground. Oh, that's the end. Right. So yes, definitely SE there. So tapping into something. Now I do think. Right. So Sana, you could say. I think you said if you just mentioned the ones that you thought you were good about Olga's definitions. I think you said that her definitions of the feeling and the sensing were good.
I don't remember sensing.
Yeah.
I do remember that FI was pretty good, and that NI seemed really weird.
Well, we are being recorded, so you know. so, so yeah, I mean, we can go through this. So I'll ask you then, Sana. So going through this, and I've asked you off air about this about a week ago. What do you think of this definition of SE that Olga's used?
I don't remember your question, but I'm sure you did.
Yeah. Do you think it's pretty good? I mean, do you think it goes beyond the stereotype of socionics, which might focus too much on power? Do you think Olga's right to put the freedom aspect in?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, it is a part of it, and maybe it's not focused on enough usually, but I think pretty much all socionic schools that I've seen do admit that it's a part of it.
Mm. Well, it's like the freedom and the power have to kind of go hand in hand. I mean, if you really value freedom of movement that much, you have to kind of be willing to.
Yeah, the whole living in the moment thing.
Yeah.
Right. What do you think about it, Enrique? You think it's a good definition?
You talking about the top one?
Yeah, basically all the stuff that's highlighted.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I want to think about it more, but so far it seems consistent to what I look for in myself.
Right. So just
So
for a
can I
slight... Yeah, go on. Go on, man.
I was
Go on,
gonna
man,
say,
Sean.
I just looking at the Model G, I think I just had an epiphany about the SE for the INTJ because it's in the manipulative
Yeah.
function. I get now why he wants to be in front of the shark, because they want to be manipulated by the SE stuff.
Oh
Right?
man, that's first hangout, and she already found my weakness.
That's deep.
Jeez.
So what I would say by this, I mean, I would say I'm glad that Olga put this thing in about freedom, because so it's almost as if it's just the point of emphasis that is slightly different with. So this is some things taken from Jeff and Kersey about the artisans, but it's pretty much defining, and it's how Dario sees it, because I've got some Dario things on the right. So it's just a slight difference in emphasis. Plus, also, I would say that the MBTI definition of SE and the Kersey conception of artisans is slightly influenced by political correctness, in that Kersey was trying to reframe the artisans into their positives. And so he might not have wanted to put stuff in about aggression and all of that, especially when, I mean, he would have seen that when he was working with the juvenile delinquents and he was trying to reframe them and look at what they were good at. And his brother used to go out fighting. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but anyway, so he was aware of the sort of the more aggressive aspects of artisans, and he probably wanted to concentrate on their intelligent actions and how they can contribute to society. But do you also think that this has some merit to it, Enrique, when you read through these sort of like, because it's almost describing how Dario would describe SE? This is more the tactical intelligence kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yearning for impact. Yeah, that definitely stands out to me. You want, I mean, for me, it's like you have a vision in your mind, and you find a path to make it real, and observe the impact that you want to have you want it to have the maximum impact. Impulsive and like being that way. Damn, yeah, that's yeah.
Please say some more about that, about the impulsive thing. And would you like to be impulsive?
It's
or some aspects of it? Are you sort of drawn to like maybe the positive side of being impulsive, but you also like, damn, I have these doubts, and it's like you want to be impulsive, but you can't be because you're aware of how things can go wrong. So
yes,
sort of caught in between.
Yes, it's like a catch-22, you know. The NI doesn't stop, so it's constantly showing you cause and effect, and sometimes you want to break free from that and just accept what comes. So yeah, that's what drives that, I would say. In
The
those moments.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, you just made me think of the INTJ I know, and he has social anxiety, and I think it's that, like, because he knows that when he does a weird thing or something, that it's like, it's going to, like, ripple through time forever. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to do a weird thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
But
Yeah.
you still want to be free. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's like so NI is almost kind of when the SE wants to come out, NI feels like a prison, and it's like, oh, if you do that, that's gonna happen. If you do that, if you do this, but when you just let it out and just free yourself from it, it's quite nice.
I'll bring you in, Bradley, because you're sort of like the opposite of this, like the SE break, but you have experience with SE Dom siblings. So what do you think of that bit there about impulsive and they like being that way, and also your sort of view on being impulsive? Do you see it as reckless?
No. No, I don't. I mean, I think it can be reckless, but I don't see it as naturally reckless. I've in terms of like my siblings who are both SE DOMs, ESFP, ESTP. There can be certain elegance about SE, but also it can be just like brute force. So there's something very admirable about like living in the moment and only in the moment. I mean, I've heard good things. I'm never able to fully do that myself. Mostly because of any always like wondering what if, and it happens instantaneously. So I can sort of like bounce back. I can sort of like bounce in between the current moment and possible futures, but I can't. Well, I guess the music is like probably the only way I can actually ground myself in the moment. But besides that, I'm always thinking about like possible futures or my own past, which is like NESI. So there are like always other things going on personally whenever I try to be in the moment. And as far as like making an impact, I don't really know. I guess because I can't. Whenever I think of impact, I think of like the implications of the impact.
That's the NI.
Not necessarily about the impact itself.
Yeah.
So I can't. I'm not good enough at SE to notice the difference between the two. But whenever I want to have an impact, it's something that I want to endure.
Yeah.
So
that's why we cannot react instinctively in the moment, because we've got that filter of thinking about the consequences. Then because we're thinking about the consequences, we miss the opportunity to react in the moment. And plus we don't get the practice. What I would say about SE is that... Go on, back to you, Brad. Go on, buddy.
No, but I will quickly add on to that. It's not that we can't act in the moment. It's that just acting isn't reason enough to act for me.
Right.
So it's I can sometimes act in the moment, but it's to see a result.
Right. There we go.
Any result, like no expected result, just a result.
Right. So it's like that's what people can't get about SPs, and this is something that Jeff tells to me a lot, is that SJ is kind of, well, why did you do it? Well, because they felt like it, because they just wanted to move or have that kinesthetic impact. So it's a way to challenge it. What I would say about SE is that to use it well, you've got to be skilled, because you're taking quite a bit of risk involved with the SE. So you can have the preference. And I think that the SE users, especially if they're showing it physically, they can get really frustrated when they age and they lose their skill. So imagine how bad it is for those players that used to be great players, but they're about 40 and are just past it, or when they're coming towards the end of their career. And they're like, when they would play, they would have a view, oh, he's an old guy because he was like 32 or something. And then when they get there, it's like, damn it.
You know?
Yeah, then you have to watch everyone else younger than you doing what?
Yeah, calling you an old man, calling you past it.
For me, that bit about yearning for impact, it's you know, SE doesn't always have to be how do I say, like a physical movement. Like I think back to when I used to work at Wall Street, and I was developing this stock order browser for the brokerage firm that I worked for, and it took me like nearly a year to build this thing. When I built it, and you know, you save the company, like that moment where you realize that your software saved the company $2.4 million. It's just like,
I hope you got a big bonus.
Yeah. But that impact is what I mean. Like yeah, that wasn't anyone else. Like I did that. Like dominant.
Rachel, do you reckon you could have knocked that out in about 3 months? It might not have worked, but you would have knocked it out quicker.
Maybe, but if only I was lucky. I have to rely on luck and a lot of times. So that was more. It's not as much of an achievement when. See, if I did that, it wouldn't feel as good as it felt to the INTJ. I think because you know what you were doing and you knew that, you knew it would lead to that.
Do you think it's true, Rachel, that ENTJs take failure better than INTJs?
Well, yeah, I think so in the sense that I'm aware that a lot of times think success can be due to factors outside of my control. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. It's hard for me to see all of that, so I rely a lot on luck. And it's like, well, sometimes people congratulate me for something, and I'm like, well, I kind of did it, but kind of not. So it's like,
so
things are a lot lighter for me in that sense. Like it's a lighter. I guess that's how I would describe it. It's just.
There's an NLP view of like it's a presupposition, so it's one of those things that's not really true, but it's good to act as if it is true. So it's like if you have the view, and probably ENTJs will have this view, there's no such thing as failure, there's only feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. I've experienced that, and in every job I've had, I've always experienced, you're really open to feedback, and it's been so easy to tell you. And like, well, yeah, I want constructive criticism. That's exactly what I need. I need to know what you think I need to do better, and I'm happy to do it. I'm not taking anything personal there. Yeah.
So what do you like, Enrique, when it comes to failure and how you view it?
I don't like it. For me, a lot of my energy goes into making sure that the plan does not fail, and you take into account all these scenarios, and you try and think of all of the possible the probabilities of those scenarios actually occurring. Yep. And I don't ever go forward with anything unless all of that has been taken into consideration. And it's tough because there are situations where you can't think of every possible scenario. So in that situation, failure is a little easier to deal with. It still sucks, but when you did take everything into account and it still fails because maybe there was a strategic error or something like that, then that just does me in. I really don't like it. I need, like, I don't know.
I'll just show people here. So imagine this is block 1 and block 5 of ILI. So we've got negative charges there. So it's about minimizing things that can go wrong. So as Enrique just said there, whereas with Rachel, it's about maximizing success, looking at the positives in the future, rather than minimizing how things can go wrong, maximizing how things can go right. So there's a difference with the positivist and negativist.
That was interesting because if you listen to what we just said, it actually matched to that.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
Yeah, and I don't focus on what can go wrong enough sometimes. I mean, I'm doing some like odd gardening jobs because I'm between work right now, and the lady was so impressed by how thorough and comprehensive I was in her yard. She has all these herbs and fruit trees and just like beautiful plants, but there was a lot of weeds and needed a lot. And I kind of got what she needed and figured it out. She was really impressed. And then but I forgot to plant like this thyme plant. It's like there's little details that I just completely forget because I don't know. I just don't even think that I'm going to do something wrong. Or I just assume, I've done it all right. She likes it. Everything's great. And it's like, I forgot to plant she wanted this planted. And I left without doing it.
Do you think, though, because you're running everything through the TE filter, that it's like, do you think it's easier for you to forget the things that are less important? Because you've got the filter
To
of
me,
TE.
it was like, well, also the plant was dead. So she was telling me that we were going to plant it and see what happened. And I guess in my mind, I just thought, it's a dead plant. And I forgot about it.
Yeah, so that's an NLP technique that people can think about, is that what are the things that the different types focus on? And you can have the same situation, people focusing on different things, on what they focus on and how that affects their personal reality. Right. So when we got stuff on the about the sort of improvisational aspect of SE, Carl Jung wrote something very interesting, but he didn't actually write it so much in his definition of SE, but he wrote it by, it was implied in his definition of NE, because when he talks about the extroverted nature of NE, right, here we go, and you can see it in this phrasing. Just as sensation, when it is the dominant function, is not a mere reactive process of no further significance for the object, but an activity that seizes and shapes its object. So you can see how Carl Jung has put that power sensing element, so seizing and shaping the object, part of SE. So intuition is not mere perception or vision, but an active creative process that puts into the object just as much as it takes out. Since it does this unconsciously, it also has an unconscious effect on the object. That's a little bit NF. That's a little bit mystical, but I'll say it though. So Carl Jung did put that active power sensing-ish thing in his definition of SE. So not just improvising in the moment, but seizing the opportunity. So I suppose that's a good way of putting it, seizing the opportunity. Right. So an SE valuers like to challenge themselves. And probably the NJs will admire those people who can challenge themselves and overcome obstacles with great skill and willpower.
Definitely.
For sure.
And in terms of the way they go about things, STPs, in the Kersey sense, are quite similar to NTJs. It's just that there's a difference between tactical goals and strategic goals, because it's harder for the Kersey STPs to keep it up in, say, a 5 to 10 year plan. Whereas ILI is like planned out to their retirement. Aren't you, Enrique?
Yeah, pretty. I have an idea of how my life's gonna go. So yes.
Hopefully, you're invested in commodities. Rachel has you have the Peter Schiff card, the gold money card, don't you?
Yeah.
She showed me it.
Yeah.
She's safe. She has her savings in gold. So if there's loads of inflation.
Not as much as I'd like, just a little. I
Yeah.
actually have more in crypto right now, so I need to. I'm working on it. Crypto looks like it's going up, so I'm letting it ride for a second.
Yeah.
But
We have lots of conversations off air, Rachel and I, because I think crypto is like a bunch of nothing, and she thinks it's the future. So there we go. But I think, she is wise though. It's like she always cashes her profits, so even if it does collapse, she's okay, and she does hedge it with the gold. So thumbs up. Right. So that's SE stuff. Right then. So now we've done that. We sort of went through both sides of SE. So the Kersey version of SE will sort of focus on slightly different things. Oh yeah, that's Jeff's joke about FI. I thought it was good.
what? I'm not looking at your right screen. Hold on.
Oh, if you click on my screen.
Got it. That's funny.
Gotta check FI.
God or Carl Jung.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then there's somebody else put, "Is your phone from 1995?"
I like the dig at the Jung PS.
Right then.
That's hilarious.
Well, I'm glad you like it. Oh yeah, mention the charges. This is the charges hangout with Victor, and this is another one of these hangouts where Maria did it on a hardly any sleep. So props to Maria. Always try and big her up for her knowledge and the fact that she does a lot of interpreting and translating for us. So I'll get. Go on, Rachel. What'd you say, Rachel?
Just the FI. Just do both ESFP and ISFP have the FI negative, or are they different?
Oh well, you see, this is where we're getting a theoretical thing. ESI is about. It's like. Imagine an ISFP.
I don't like
that's
my dual. They're mean.
Yeah, they can be a little bit hardcore. ESI, they're a little bit different from the cozy one. So it's like if you just think about ESFP.
I think they're nicer.
Yeah, ESF because they've got power sensing of resistance. They're about ESFP is more about freedom. ESTP is a little bit more about subordination and a little bit more 8-ish. Although you can get 7-ish ESTPs. But I would think ESTP is more likely to be like 7 wing 8. And a little bit more about the power and control because they've not got the FI there and able to see like the reaction, the effect on people. Well, okay, they can see the effect on people, but they don't have the ability to like imagine how the other person is actually feeling behind the emotional expression that they're giving off.
Yeah.
Or at least not until they develop that later on, probably via FE.
So
Right.
wait, so when you were saying this is like getting really theoretical, is all this negative and positive, is this like still pretty theoretical? I mean, it's all theoretical, but
Yeah, it generally works. So for example, it's based on all the positivist types in socionics with the reigning dichotomy. They all get a positive charge on their lead function and their auxiliary function. So
okay.
ENTJ is a positivist type. So you've got positivist TE and positivist NI. ILI is a negativist type. Now, the actual charges are completely different. So, and that relates to ILI being a process type, and Vit would call a right spinning type. ENTJ is a left spinning type. NII is a left spinning type. So they're more result than process. So generally that works very well, but you get to some types where it's a little bit weird. So for instance, LSI, process type, right spinning, and when you read the profile of LSI, it's a little bit cozy ISTJ-ish. But there is some, however, there is somebody out there who does very much resemble Socionics LSI, and even Victor has said he named Putin. Putin is very LSI. He's more, he has that combination of like not wanting to take too many risks, yeah, but really valuing the power sensing and riding shirtless on a horse, and not seeing him wrestling a bear, but I have seen him going into a cage with a tiger. Well, not a tiger, like a big carnivorous cat and like stroking it.
He submerges himself in cold water too. And there's schools in Russia where they have the kids go outside and dump cold water on themselves to build up their immunity.
Right.
It's hardcore.
Yeah.
In this screen you have here, this I think I relate to power sensing of resistance.
Yeah, that's it. That's what it is as a right spinning type that ILI is. It's whereas IEI theoretically is more about power sensing of subordination. However, one of the things that Maria stressed, and I will always stress, is for those people in Model A, the more dimensions a function has, the more you can use both sides of the charges. So, for example, I suppose ILI can force themselves to look on the bright side of life, because at least they think that the project might pay off in the future. It's not like they're totally negativist. Oh, it's not going to work anyway. they do think it's going to work. I mean, you do think they're going to pay off, don't you? But you just got to be like extra careful and make sure, eliminate all the bad things that can happen.
It's mainly the other way around. We got to be extra careful, but it's going to work out.
Yeah, there you go. So that's using the positive side of NI. Right. So now we can get to. I think I showed that. So this is So that's the explanation. Yeah. self-affirmation block. People can sort of mentioned this before, but if you want to read it, folks, pause it.
What
There
does
you
it
go.
mean? Okay, what does it mean at close range?
Well, it works very well for LII. So, for example, I am at close range at the moment. I am talking about what I am interested in, and I am expressive. I think David
Okay.
Kersey Jr. and David Mark Kersey called it getting a bit flaky. Like, he said that he would have conversations with a mastermind, INTJ and Kersey, and it was like they would look at him because like he would like be going on from idea to idea to idea. And that's when, in our expressiveness in that situation, we look a little bit like an ENFP.
Yeah.
And Maria has said that I act a little bit ENFP-ish in Hangouts. Right then.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so we see the NE the most at close range, which makes total sense. That's what we see in you more than your TI, because that's you're doing that when you're off air. You're doing that all the time.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
it's also worth noting that it does check out with MBTI because in that theory, you're supposed to be able to observe the two extroverted functions a lot easier than the introverted ones. So, like an INTP would show you more. You'd see even though like TI and SI might be stronger, you'd see more.
Yeah, that's how I traditionally learned it years ago when I looked at the B model.
Right. Now, seeing as you brought it up, Bradley, let's get to that issue of the big issue that I think, from a diagnostic point of view, MBTI is right to sort of say, look, it doesn't really matter if LII or ILI is a perceiver. In the world, they are JAF. They are J like ENTJ.
Yeah.
And it's very hard. So, for instance, Haley scored 100% J on the MBTI. So my challenge there to the Socionics people out there, come up with a test. So we've got two people here, Enrique and Rachel. Come up with some JP questions where Enrique would score as a P and Rachel would score as a J.
I think that's just so hard. I can't even.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And that, in my opinion, is one of the reasons why Socionics tests aren't very good. Sorry, Bradley.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's why the Socionics codes are only 3 letters. It's just like they're just not going to.
And I think that's why I actually scored as ENTP when I would take the sociotype, the Socionics tests that were online, the easy to find ones. I would score as ENTP because I'm not really sure why, but it didn't.
I'll just say this. So this comes through in LII, so TINX. So, for example, internally, we are organized and we plan, but not in the world. So it comes through in here. So it's like internally, so it's like well-versed in business matters, can suggest a variety of entrepreneurial initiatives, knows how to, but it's like we've not got the energy for it. So it's like internally. So we will plan, but we've not got the energy to actually enact it.
Mm-hmm.
So because
I'd argue that I'm not really well versed in business matters. I do have theories about business, but
yeah, some of these yeah.
So hang on a minute. You said you got an INTP younger sibling, Rachel. What do you reckon for the TE plus for him?
I don't know. He would maybe, cause he works for UPS. I'm just thinking of an example. Like, it seems like he understands. Like, oh, here's things that could be done better. But he knows he has all these ideas, but it's not anything he ever.
Right, it's like give the ideas to somebody else. We want an efficient support staff. That's what Kersey wrote in the profile. He said this: if an organization is to get their most out of an architect rational, so that's LII, that's TINX. He said they need to be provided with an efficient support staff in order to capture the ideas as they emerge before they move on to something else.
He would just
Yeah.
blurt it out because he's frustrated, and you could tell he has no energy for this. He'd be like,
Yeah.
well, I could do this and this and this, and like,
Right.
all right, I need some pizza or something. He'd just be
Okay.
on to the next.
No, that's like SI plus. Maximize the comfort. Right. So I'll just go through this. Are the people above correct? By the way, in MBTI they use JP of the top extroverted function. So in the case of, or rather, in the case of the type that Bradley and I identify with, that would be NE, and that would be a perceiving function, even though the lead function of the type we identify with is rational. So the idea is that Enrique would interact in the world in a very J organized way, a very TE way, and that is not too far dissimilar from the way Rachel does as ENTJ. But in terms of actions, walking the walk, INTJ is quite similar to ENTJ. It's just they've got less energy and they think more about the consequences. Is that fair to say in terms of actual behavior?
Yeah,
Right.
I would agree with that. I mean, the moment I leave my house and start getting things done, it's going to be very focused, very, nothing's going to get in my way. I'm just going to accomplish the things that I need to accomplish in a sequential order. And I think, yeah, someone watching me, they're going to probably think I'm a TE Dom because I don't allow anything to slow me down at that point, because at that point all the thinking already happened. I already planned out the most efficient way to do these tasks, and I just go about doing them.
Right. So Rachel's microphone just dropped out of the Hangout, although her webcam is still here. Oh no, it's working. It might go a bit weird. Right. So back to this. So yeah. But also we have done a Hangout where, so it's like, this is why I call the type NiTx. It's like that type ILI is using both kinds of TE. Sorry, both kinds of thinking, the extroverted thinking and the TI. Because if you see the creative, it was the social mission one, where the TI is working with the NI, and in Enrique's case, that's looking for the inconsistencies, checking the structure of things. I'll ask you, Enrique, in terms of like the actual Jungian definition of TI, how much of your own theories and subjective thinking are you doing? Coming up with your own stuff rather than just using the logic from the outside world, or right from outside of you.
I don't know if I do a lot of that. I think TI and Socionics is more about just ensuring that the system or whatever it is you're looking at matches or meets some kind of objective logical criteria.
Yeah.
It's not a...
Yeah, but that might be your TE though. It's hard to tell, isn't it? You might be filtering your TI through your TE. So you have your own subjective theories. So it's like, okay, is that a useful idea? If it's useful, I'll develop it.
Yeah, it's hard to see the line of because they're both in that moment, they're both quite active, right? So it's not incredibly obvious to me.
So as Jung wrote, it's like a philosophical intuition with the aid of a powerful intellect. So that's for the ILIs out there. You have a powerful intellect, not just TE. Not that there's anything wrong with TE. So people can read that on screen. Any thoughts about that? Or is it just me doing too much LII stuff? Going into
I got cut off because I lost my phone, which was doing my audio. I hope there's not too much of an echo. Is everything?
No, you're fine. You're fine at the moment.
Okay. My thought was just like, as far as the P and J, I mean, it's really, isn't it just a matter of like, well, what do we think is most important? Is it when we decide if someone's a J or a P? I mean, is it, I mean, it's like, why for some types would it be, well, here's what they're doing in their internal world, so they're a J. And then for other types, well, here's what they're doing in the external world, so they're a P. Yeah. I mean, you would think you want them uniform. Either we're looking at how people are in the world and that's how we determine it, or we're looking at how people are within and that's how we determine it. But having both for different types, depending on introvert or extrovert, that seems hard for me to wrap my head around, because that's how it is in socionics, right? The introverts are the ones that are swapped.
Yeah, that's the problem. The problem is it's, so I would say socionics is right on the theory, but when you look at the actions, like the mirror pairs can be quite similar. So as we say, between you two, Enrique and Rachel, one's technically a perceiver, one's technically a judger, and there is a slight difference in FP1 and FP2 in the prefrontal cortex, but in terms of actions, quite similar.
Mm-hmm.
One's just more assertive and risk-taking and quicker acting than the other. Another's more careful and maybe a bit more longer ranged. So yeah, this is really a question about diagnostics and the fact that there isn't really a good, and this is one of the reasons why people criticize socionics.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. Any thoughts on that? Oh, dude, it went all weird. But I'll just right. Any thoughts on that, or is it just basically recapitulating what I've just said?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking at how the types work on a cognitive level, right?
Yeah.
Then you know, the ILI would be considered a perceiver, right? Because we're looking at, or at least we're thinking about what could happen. And we're perceiving as we're trying to gather data to figure out what the situation is. Whereas, you know,
I would
perhaps Rachel would just be more prone to act.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in that sense, I mean, but if you look at actions, then it's the complete opposite. So
what I would say is, when people are looking at the actions of, we're not looking at them when the INTJ is in their proper introverting mode and they're sort of going in that weird NI state where they're sort of zoning out and perceiving things and doing the mystical NI thing. Then they're a perceiver. Because it's perceiving via the unconscious.
And I see that's a large amount of the time for an INTJ. I mean,
so what do you think that looks like, Rachel? I mean, you've seen that. What that weird that sort of like NI state, this perception via the unconscious.
Yeah, I don't know what I mean.
It's hard to explain, isn't it?
Hard to describe, but I definitely can go into that state. Like at work, if things are really chaotic around, like sometimes I'll need to just like do that zone out thing, and it's like, okay.
And when you're doing that, do you think?
Huh?
Yeah. Linda Barron's recently rephrased judging function to an evaluative function. So when you're in that state, what is it? Because you know about typology, what does it feel like? Does it feel like, oh, I'm in a moment of evaluating things, or I'm in a way of envisioning things? I'm sort of trying to get an idea of, or is it difficult to actually do the process and sort of look at yourself doing the process at the same time? Because if you're looking at yourself doing the process, you're not really doing the process.
Well, I see it as like a very observational function. So I'm aware that I'm observing stuff. It's like a mix between a feeling and a visual, I would say. I don't know if that did, what do you, I mean, you're NI dominant, Enrique, so. How do you see it? Does that make sense? Like a mix between like a visual, because it's not really like you're seeing, but you are.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, for me, it's you know, I could look up at the wall and I'm gonna see things.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
gonna,
So for you, yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna.
Wait a minute. What are you seeing, Enrique? Let us into the world of NI.
This is good. I need to know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna see the I guess the path forward towards the goal, and you know, the basically just cause and effect. It's just an endless stream of cause and effect of whatever it is that I'm thinking about, and I may be unaware that I'm even thinking about it, because there are times where, you know, I'm working on a problem, or I'm trying to fix an issue with this system. The other day I was working on a system for a bank in Japan, and I couldn't figure it out, and then I kind of just took a break, I took a shower, and then bam, solution came to me. It's like, oh, okay. And
Yeah, that's it.
But
When
isn't
it
it-
comes up from the unconscious,
Yeah.
that's it.
But is it, while it's happening, like, here's what I kind of observe is it's like this weird where it's not, because it's not TI, it's not that you have all these facts that are computing and then it's the NI is more like, it's like a fluid or something, and it's like there's a language or a symbolism to it that only you understand. And then when it comes together, boom, now you know how to like put it into words or do the TE stuff with it. But before it becomes into that, like, boom, it's not really anything in a way. But it's like, to me, this is just how it feels for me, maybe because I don't use it all the time, but it's like all this kind
Oh no.
of zone. Yeah, that.
Could you thing you last said?
I don't know.
yeah, it's just it's a path, and it's a path that has all the details omitted. So it's not like it's like
Just
when, like when I see the solution, right? It's not necessarily that I see every single line of code that's going to solve the problem. What I see is an approach that perhaps I didn't think of before. And then when I try the approach and I do it, and I, you know, start adding in all the details related to that approach, and it turns out to solve the problem, it's like, oh wow, nice, sweet.
Right,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go through this. I think this is a really good thing here to like think about, because trying to really get at it and like proper depth. So we've got here, Bradley, do you want to read this out? Oh, it's just dropped off. So Enrique, if you read this out and then stop, because I reckon there's some good stuff on this.
Top extroverted function.
Yeah.
Update. Young Rip describes the extroversion as objective and externally directed. You can decide for yourself about how this bit here on extroversion relates to the effect of the top extroverted function on how we interact in the world, given extroversion is externally directed, and thus by definition the extroverted functions are especially the demonstrative functions in introverts, where they are deliberately extroverting in a sense. Therefore, extroversion is you need some commas in there, man.
Well, this next one's that's Jung when it says in a sense. So, you know, dig him up and blame him.
Okay, all right. In a sense, therefore, extroversion is an outgoing transference of interest from the subject towards the object.
Okay.
Actually, you're right. I did need some commas in the bit that I wrote before that. So naughty Ben.
Yeah, I'm glad you're not the only one who has troubles reading Carl Jung, because sometimes I read a paragraph of him and I have no idea what I just read.
Come to me, because I think about it quite a bit. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna properly analyze it, folks, and do hangouts on it. Yeah, if I can rope people into doing it. So what about this bit? So after that bit, it gets clear. So if you read that bit where it says, if it is an intellectual extroversion.
Okay, if it is an intellectual extroversion, The subject thinks himself into the object. If a feeling extroversion, then the subject feels himself into the object. Well, that's interesting.
Now imagine if that object is a person, they will feel themselves into the person to experience how they think they're feeling.
Wow.
That's weird to me. That's why my ESFJ mom is like kind of scary.
That sounds I agree with that. The state
like,
of extroversion.
You don't really know.
The state of extroversion means a strong, if not exclusive, determination by the object. One should speak of an active extroversion when deliberately willed. This might be more the case in introverts, given their natural state is introverted, and of a passive extroversion when the object compels it. It is more the case for extroverts, i.e., attracts the interest of the subject of its own accord, even against the latter's intention.
Now, this bit is absolutely massive for me. Should the state of extroversion become habitual, the extroverted type appears. So that is implying that it is not innate, and that there's a thing that's a little bit like Kersey, where you enact a role, where you do it, it becomes habitual. So the way Carl Jung was defining the type was like very conditional. I speak of a type in as much as the attitude becomes habituated. So that is very interesting to me. All right, I think I put a little bit extra down there. Oh, willed. This bit's interesting. So it's about, this is one of the reasons why Dario and Linda, they won't say extroversion and introversion. They will say extroverting and introverting, because they see it as a process, not as a nominalization, not turning a verb into an abstract noun. So willed, this lines up with Model G internalities row of introverts containing the extroverted functions. The internality functions having more limited scope of use compared to the externality functions. So maybe we have to deliberately go into an extroverted mode. So Enrique, do you think that you have to sort of like will yourself to go into TE mode, or whereas you think TI is on all the while, you have to sort of switch on the TE, or is it sort of running in the background and you have to sort of like switch to focusing on it?
Yeah, it's like yeah, it does kind of feel that way. Like, you know, let's say if I'm studying something or I'm like typing code or whatever, and then it's like, okay, yeah, it's time to do this, it's time to do that, and then it's I'll just get going. Like it's just like switch just kind of goes, and now I'm in TE mode, and I just start going. And it's kind of the same with SE. When before something happens in my head as I'm approaching the handball courts,
Yeah.
like I whatever I was thinking about just kind of just fades away, and I'm ready to. It's almost like a preparation to immerse myself in the moment.
All right, here's some important theory as well about right, John Beebe said that Carl Jung only wrote one line about the auxiliary function, and I've measured that line. It's nearly 3 meters long. So there you go. That's his one line on the auxiliary function. So, you know, just saying. Right, okay, this is what Carl Jung actually wrote about the extroverted function. So this correlates to the demonstrative function. Right, I'll read this bit here. Experience shows that the secondary function is always one whose nature is different from, though not antagonistic to, the leading function. Thus, for example, thinking as primary function can readily pair with intuition as auxiliary, or indeed equally well with sensation, but as already observed, never with feeling. Neither intuition nor sensation are antagonistic to thinking, i.e. they have not to be unconditionally excluded, since they are not, like feeling, of similar nature, though of opposite purpose to thinking. For, as a judging function, feeling successfully competes with thinking, but are functions of perception, affording welcome assistance to thought. As soon as they reach the same level of differentiation as thinking, they would cause a change of attitude which would contradict the tendency of thinking. And then we've got stuff on JP. There's a myth that Jung didn't have JP, but he did have rationality and irrationality. In fact, he split them up according to that. So he would have summary of the extroverted rational types, because he had a section on TE and FE. Summary of the extroverted irrational types, so he would have a section on SE and NE. Summary of the introverted rational types section.
Man, this is a really long tangent you're on. Can
Yeah,
we get back to the...
this is to do with it. So JP stuff. This is for the proper depth.
You're killing all of the NJs.
Right, okay. Right, as soon as we reach the real level of differentiation as thinking, they would cause a change of attitude, for they would convert judging attitude into a perceiving one, whereupon the principle of rationality, indispensable to thought, would be suppressed in favor of the irrationality of mere perception. So he was doing JP. Right, here the auxiliary function is possible only insofar as it serves the leading function without making any claim to the autonomy of its own principle. Now we get into the thing about what is the auxiliary function in, say, ILI. Is it TI or is it TE? I think Carl Jung sits on the fence. So, for example, the only thing that validates the MBTI view is that when it says here, different in every respect, that bit would, but for here, from the combinations well known that arise. So if we think about here, practical intellect, for instance, paired with sensation. Do you think it's fair to say TE with SI or TE with sensor? Practical intellect.
Mm-hmm.
No, and then we've got speculative intellect. So TI, subjective thinking, breaking through. And then he puts here with intuition. It doesn't say NE or NI, it just says intuition. And then we've got here artistic intuition, which selects and presents its images by means of a feeling judgment. Now, I would just say here, he has already defined TE as practical intellect. So he could very easily say about NIT, he could very easily have said philosophical intuition in league with practical thinking. But he doesn't write that. He just writes powerful intellect because he would have seen that creative function, that sixth function in Model B. He would have, because he got all these from like doing therapy with people. He would have seen what socionics calls the creative function. So if he would have, say he was like doing therapy on people like Enrique, he would have noticed the TI. If he was doing therapy on people like Bradley, he would have noticed the NI. With Sana, he would have noticed the FI. So this is why he sits on the fence. So we've got here the philosophical intuition, which in league with a vigorous intellect translates its vision into the sphere of comprehensible thought. So do you reckon I think you mentioned this to me, Rachel, or it may have been Sana, that he was a little bit sat on the fence with the second function, didn't he? But very specific about the first one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that was me, but
yeah,
I don't remember.
Right. Okay. So, oh yes, here's an example. Here's an example that.
Are we gonna get back to ILI?
Yes, we actually are talking about ILI now.
I know, but we are not.
We are, because we're going to talk this bit about Nietzsche, because this relates to this bit that he's talking about, this type here. When he talks about a powerful intellect, he's thinking of Nietzsche because he mentions him here about this thing with the NI with the powerful intellect. So it says here an intuitive type, and then admixture of feeling, yes. Pronounced critical intellectualism in the manner of the 18th century. His lack of rational moderation and conciseness argues for the intuitive type in general. And then you've got Dionysian qualities of his unconscious. So he was hot for SE like Dario and Enrique and Sana. Right. Now, given that we've just shown what Carl Jung actually wrote, this is from Wikisocion. It goes a little bit too far when it says, in his work, he described 8 types while acknowledging 2 varieties of the auxiliary functions per main type. He didn't exactly write that. We had to sort of imply it what he wrote. Right, I think now we can get to the bullet points. That thing I said we were going to get to sooner, but we never did. Oh yes, here's the thing about SE. So,
And
well, this is about SE. So, Enrique, which one of these do you identify with?
This is very personal.
I don't think you're necessarily going to get an answer to this.
Okay, I'll ask you some of them. Which one of these do you identify with?
I don't think you're necessarily going to get an answer to this.
Rachel, what do you think? What do you identify here? Okay, I'll move on. We'll do that later. That's yeah, we'll do it later. Bullet points. Right, then I'm going to put it right there in the middle so that everyone knows we're on T minus. In fact, I'll put it differently because I will get it nicer. Because I'll use the SVG file, then it will automatically rescale and it won't go blocky. So, for instance, here, TE, the function that shows us active, obstinate, enduring behavior. So, Sana, do you reckon that Enrique can get active, obstinate, and enduring?
Yes.
Okay. All right then. So
I'm just gonna add that it sounds like that description was written by someone who doesn't value TE.
Yeah.
Well, Victor, that's the official definition. The official short definition. So we'll go through this. So, Enrique, are you emphatically frugal?
Yes. I mean that's I'm trying to think of scenarios here.
I wonder if all ILIs are like that, even the ones that don't identify with Enneagram 5. Because the 5 is quite frugal as well.
Emphatically frugal. Yeah, I mean, I do have empathy, but it's not necessarily giving that out too freely.
So yeah, ILIs are extremely frugal, so extremely sort of parsimonious and bit cheapskates. So do you agree with that sort of point of view?
Cheapskates.
Yeah. So sort of like putting an emphasis on frugality.
Yeah.
No. Right. What about this? This might be a bit based in maybe harsher economic realities in Ukraine and Russia, but find more profitable ways to sell old possessions.
Yeah, actually, when I moved, I managed to sell everything that I wanted to throw away.
Ooh.
It was well planned.
Nice.
TE points.
And I did study the prices online. I made sure to give each item an attractive price point, but a price point that also allowed me to profit, considering considering how long I owned it.
Right then, so what about number 3?
Likes offering advice as a way of putting the information they acquire.
Sorry, this number 3 fits in an area I know quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to mention that thing that I mentioned right at the start. There's an example of that's the sort of thing they would do on their territory. It's not like they're going to be talking to everyone. Hey, I've got some advice for you. So it's like when you get to know them, they might offer that advice. So that might be an example of the close range thing coming
Well, and
through.
it's good use. It's like they don't waste their time with people that
No,
they don't think are gonna use that.
definitely not. I'm not gonna waste my my
Breath.
time, my breath on someone that's not even gonna listen or take in the advice. Yeah, I definitely do that. I mean, I read a lot about different things, and whenever I see an opportunity to help somebody with some random information that I studied or picked up, provided that they'll actually use it, I will attempt to help.
Oh, one thing we talk about at the bottom. So I mentioned this slightly before. So Rachel's got more business logic of investments, slightly more ambitious and slightly more conservative in ILL. However, because it's a strong function, use both sides of it. So not as negative about it. Although I would think in terms of a temperament point of view, I think ILI can be less conservative than LSE because you've got the guardian temperament with LSE that will make them go more with the tried and true kind of business approach. So, for instance, I know someone whose grandmother was worked as a stockbroker, and she did the very traditional kind of investment policy. So again, it's like conservative viewpoint coming through. Do you think that rings true, Enrique? The sort of like the difference between TE minus and TE plus. Say the difference between ENTJ and Kersey INTJ ILI.
For me, P minus. Yeah, working efficiently is definitely important to me. For instance, if I don't know, if I have to do some task and let's say I ask, or let's say the manager or the person giving me the task says, "Oh yeah, here's how you do it," and it's this like incredibly tedious, efficient process. I will not do it that way. I will find a better way, a more efficient way.
That's where your TI is coming in. Your
Yeah.
way, your logic, not standard operating procedure, not the standard that's from outside of you, your own thoughts, your own reasoning.
And I will also attempt to automate it. That way, no one else has to go through that nonsense again.
Yeah. All right, so we go back to what about number 4?
Will not accept snap decisions nor yield to blind enthusiasm. Oh man, that hits home. Yeah. No. I don't. It's difficult for me to trust or to go with anything that's just. And there comes a bit of a paradox here with SE. I don't really trust anything that's done without any thought or without any forethought into it, which is at odds with SE. So it's a little tricky. But in especially at work, no, definitely. I need to see what the plan is before I go with something. And blind enthusiasm, yeah, that's not enough. I need to see the path forward, like it. And that's happened to me at work in my past, where people are really excited and they're like, yeah, we're gonna do this, yeah, and I'm like, okay, how how, like, how are we gonna get from this step to that step? Show me the plan. And if there's no plan, then or not necessarily a detailed plan, but like, you know, at least an approach
Yeah.
that can stand in the face of scrutiny.
So number 5, I think if the ILI resembling person doesn't have access to computers, do you think they are likely to do, say, number 5?
Achieve mastery in repair, assembly. Well, definitely repair. I actually enjoy fixing things. I learned how to fix my air conditioner. I learned how to fix my dishwasher. I like fixing my. I like maintaining my Jeep. So I'm not one to like, oh yeah, let the mechanic do it. Like, no, I'll go in. I'll spend the whole week studying how to change the transmission oil or how to do this, how to service the brakes and whatever. Yeah, it takes long. It takes time. Sorry, people are gonna have to wait. It takes time. But once I learn, once I figure it out, then that's it. It's no longer gonna take time anymore. So that's
It'll
just
save you money.
exactly.
Like,
And not only that, but you learn something new. You learn a new skill. Because what if there isn't a mechanic? You know, there was a situation. I drove like where was it? 3 hours. It was like a 3 hour drive, and something happened with a friend's car, and there was no mechanic around. But guess who knew how to fix it? So
nice.
things like that. Yeah.
Your 3 is showing. I can do this. I can do that. It's okay though. You're illustrating the point. So this is interesting to me. These little things that come up. Here, they make good small-scale supervisors. Why is that interesting? And especially for compatibilists like me, well, 3/4 compatibilists. The social mission block of ESTJ administrator is TESE. They make good smaller scale supervisors. So we're saying here, when they're on the territory, can act a little bit ESTJ-ish.
I agree with that. Running a whole, like, being like a CEO or running a business doesn't really appeal to me, but being like the technical lead of a team of application engineers, I could totally do that.
Right.
So that does kind of make sense.
When you say you inspect somebody's code, that's a little bit more of an more reserved version of ESTJ, because it's like you are literally inspecting the work of others. And finding it. So there's a little bit in terms of role enactment, you are doing a little bit of inspecting there and vetting.
Yeah.
So then you got, what about number 7?
May show surprising level of skill and expertise. Well, this is kind of forcing me to toot my own horn here.
Yeah. Come on, surprise us.
Surprising.
Yeah, I think I already did a bit of that, so.
Right. Okay, I'll ask Bradley. Does your father match a lot of these things?
Oh. Oh yeah, my father's also INTJ, ILI. I think number 3 pretty much fits all ILIs. At least I haven't met one where there's an exception.
Which one?
3.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he fits 3. He fits 1. Well, actually, he fits 1 sometimes. He
is it sometimes, sorry to interrupt, but does sometimes like they get in the grip of the SE and like they want to do some SE stuff, get that speedboat, and like spend money on some SE stuff?
Well, yes, but also I think I'm gonna go a bit into Enneagram here. I think he's a 6, and I think he in terms of the arrows, he went to the low side of 3, of being exhibitionistic and being like, see, I can do this, which affected his money habits a lot. as a sort of a lower form of the behavior of a 6/3 end of an INTJ.
So was it also an element of wanting to spend the money to sort of show a certain status?
Yeah. So a mix of all three of those things. A mix of the SC with the status showing and the just general showing off. But it's not to paint allies in a bad light. But I will say that one is very it's probably true of most allies who are like more healthy. Number 4 is like they want snap decisions from other people. But they're more likely to have their own snap decisions and go with that. It might not be snap decisions to them, but to other people who aren't as apprised of what's going on in the internal monologue.
Yeah, it's the NI thing. They might have that strong belief that they're right. Right. Back to you, Buddy.
Mastery and repair certain jobs, yes, but doesn't always have the energy to do it. So it's like, yes, I know how to do it, but I don't want to, so someone else do it. Supervisors, yeah, they do. Or at least he did. Number 6 is very true. And so is number 7. So I will say in general it fits in very well.
Right, so to you, Rachel, does this fit the ILIs that you know? If you go through them 1 to 7.
I'm thinking of Athen, my ex, you know, still good friend, investing partner. And I mean, all this, he's actually the one, I mean, I'd credit him for keeping me on track with having commodity investments and having more secure investments as a foundation. He's always reiterated that kind of stuff. And
I'll give him Peter Schiff points. For
lots of advice. Lots of advice for life, just life advice. He's great. Supervisor for him, no, but he's got a really hardcore case of social anxiety.
Did he try to supervise you? A little bit personal, but
yeah, tried. Yeah, it didn't work out too well, but yeah, he would do repairs himself and stuff too. Yeah, all this sounds like him as well.
Yeah, so when we're talking about that, so I mentioned that right at the beginning about the territory thing. So the two that seem to come through to me about territory are number 3, they don't just offer advice to everybody, and also maybe the mastery and repair, maybe it's like certain things. The smaller scale supervisor, maybe again, smaller scale internality, narrower scope of use, and maybe the, again, surprising level of skill and expertise. So if it's surprising, it's not very evident, and so it's going to be in a narrow field where something that's surprising. Right. Jeff talked about his father being a champion bass fisherman.
Oh, one thing Athen is good at with groups is board games. He's really into creating board games, like complex games, and he'll get people together and he'll kind of lead that kind of group. So he will do that. Oh,
so when you've actually seen him do that, does he sort of interact with people like a little ESTJ?
I've never really seen him do it, but one time. Yeah. I guess, yeah. I mean, he dominates the situation, right. I guess.
So would you say that the role he is enacting in that situation is the role of supervisor? So
yeah.
Right. So that matches up with TE and SE, social mission block of ESTJ.
Well, because he's like, well, here's how things are going to go for the goal that we're trying to do, which is create this game or play this game. Here's how everything's going to go, you know?
Right, I want to quickly go through these bullet points. So, Enrique, what about these 3 here? Kiddie stuff?
Yeah, I mean, number 1 for sure. Usually know the time and the point you're at in a process. I think that goes back to that T1 conversation that we had in the other hangout, where just have a sense of when is the right time for what.
Yeah, so for the audience, that's the lead NI, T1. There's T for intuition of time.
I agree. I think that's about NI.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Dario being NiTx, sometimes you might, oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, some of these questions, some of the things, when he puts these things in, some of them relate to sort of like, so for example, when he did TI, a lot of the questions sounded like the things that TI and X is good at, and then ones that TI SX are good at. So some of these will sort of look like that. So it's like, oh, it sounds like ENTJ, it sounds like ESTJ, that kind of thing. So you're good at all those top three?
Yes.
Right. Rachel, what about you? TE Dom, Rachel. Oh, I'll get back to her later. So we'll go to the middle lot then. The middle lot. What about these? Oh, we'll try and get them all in. There we go. Dario has even used the Kersey names. Mobilize resources. So Kersey called the ENTJ the mobilizer. And then you've got supervise, the supervisor.
Yeah, that first one. Stick to making decisions based on impersonal measures, such as points earned. I mean, yeah, I like to make my decisions based off objective criteria, but there is also like a little splash of FI into it as well.
Is it there in the sense of what you choose to measure is like ranked by value? This criterion I'm measuring, this is a very important criterion.
Yeah, something like that. So I'm not, that first one is a little tricky. Conceive a comprehensive plan to maximize progress towards goals. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that one for sure. Mobilize, no. And supervise, implementation, supervise.
Yeah, this is for the TE DOMs, that one.
That one is not me.
Yeah.
Construct an argument to convince someone using evidence clearly in front of you both. I'm not usually in the business of convincing people, but there are scenarios where I do that. I would say yes to that one. Lay out steps for others to complete tasks in time in resource efficient ways. Lay out steps for others. No.
Yeah, well, ENTJ would, because if they want to, if they're running an organization, running people, it's like, do this, do that, these are the steps, go to the goal.
It's weird when I read these, it's like I do part of that, but then I do lay out the steps to complete it. It's like if you remove the 4 others, I do that.
This is the thing, because this is trying to get at the ENTJ. So this is trying to get at the TE DOMs. ESTJ and ENTJ are in charge. They're ESTJ is monitoring people. So you've got monitor supervisor. ENTJ is coordinator mobilizer. So coordinating people, supervising people, people directed because extroverted. So you can see the link up with Kersey here, mobilizing forces and arranging things. So you do more of the arranging rather than the mobilizing. So, right then, so, and Rachel's microphone doesn't work, but she's probably great at all of those things. Right, okay, so now we're going to do SE, and then we'll do Dario's thing is. In fact, I'll click on that one. If that's the right one, that's not the right one, that's the wrong one. This is the right one. SE, manipulative SE. Try to contain yourself, Enrique. I'll put that in the middle so that we... Actually, I'll put it over there. Need to get rid of that thing. Actually, I don't need to get rid of that thing because that thing is actually quite useful for showing where the... what gets covered up. Because the little boxes at the bottom of the screen sometimes cover things up. There we go, we'll go with that. I'm not changing that. There it is. What about number 1?
When meeting direct force, ILIs may yield at first. However, over time, they acquire confidence, learn the game, and become capable of using force themselves when needed. Yeah, I would agree with that. There is a it's like when I encounter some type of resistance, I don't just go head on into it. I wish I could, but what I tend to do is I study it,
Right.
and that I figure out how to defeat it, not necessarily avoid it. I want to defeat it. So it's sometimes it is wiser to avoid it, but I end up fighting with it.
Right, so I have a Medal G test question for you all. Which part of bullet point number 1 do you think shows the internality aspect of it?
The internality aspect
Of it, yeah. Sort of shows that it's conditional, that it happens when somebody is on their territory.
The lethargic disposition.
Oh, this is towards number 1 in the SE plus.
I think learn the game and become capable of using the force, like that part.
What I was thinking, yeah, I mean, it's sort of like over time, but because the reason why I'm banging on about this is to sort of like show this example of externality, internality. And it's about scope of use and when you're on your territory. To me, the bit that stuck out to me was when needed. When needed, you can do the number 1. And so that's an example. Whereas if it was in the externalities row, there's a greater scope of use for using the SE. So for example, Rachel probably, even though it's lower energy, there's probably more situations that Rachel uses SE than you use it.
Yeah.
But when you're in your zone, Enrique, you can do the handball thingy, guitar thing.
I feel like I can't. I'm not that coordinated.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
it's interesting. That's an interesting observation. Yeah, it's true when needed.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there, here we go. Again, SE. These little things. So this is one of the things I'm trying to notice about Victor, because he's very, very deductive. When you notice things, that's in there because of this premise. So for example, number 2, within their close circle. Again, territory within their close circle. So you can now see why that it sounds like an internality description. Whereas if this was in, so for example, if this was, say, SEE, it would just be something like, not afraid of confrontation. wider scope of use, not just a case of within their circle.
Yeah, it's probably more dimensions. They have more. It's just they have more situations where they'll use it.
Right, because they're extrovert more. They're extroverting.
What dimension is this for INTJ? I don't know what positions or what dimensions yet.
Oh, in Model A, it would be one-dimensional. But dimensions aren't really part of Model G, but you can sort of you can sort of like bring them over because it's a nice shorthand for seeing how strong a function is. In Model G, this is a strong function on a narrow scope of territory. So, for example, in IEI, they can be very brave in certain circumstances. Say if a loved one is in danger, they are brave in that narrow set of circumstances. If you think of LII, when they're on their territory, say there's an LII convention and they're all talking about something theoretical that they love, then their FE is going to be strong on that specific territory. So it's a narrow scope of use.
Wow.
Whereas if we compare ILI, I would suggest that they use FE more, but I think we use it better when we're on our territory. But that's a bit contentious.
Well, yeah.
It depends on the individual. Because they would say inappropriate stuff, like Rachel and I talked off air about the stuff Peter Schiff says, where it's like, okay, just stick to economics, Peter. Right. Which one are we on?
I think we were on number 3.
That's it, yeah. What do you reckon to that?
They're laid back, almost lethargic disposition can suddenly turn into violent resistance. Lethargic.
My friend Athen would laugh the same way you did at that.
Yeah, there's unfortunately there's some sad truth to it.
So Rachel, are the first two true of Athen as well?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's all like the on his territory sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we go number 4. So they're not great at seizing the moment naturally because they're doing the NI thing and thinking about the consequences. But when it's like in those circumstances, it's like, yes, seize the moment.
Can seize the moment by noticing and putting to use the resources made available by the circumstances. Yeah, it's like I'm able to do that, but just rolling the dice.
Yeah. Because you're thinking about the consequences. And also, that's quite Kersey SE. I'll just put that in there. Well, Kersey Artisan, because he didn't do functions officially.
Yeah, that's... I always feel when I'm in those situations where it's like there's no time to think, you gotta just go, and I didn't have enough time to consider all the scenarios. It's quite draining, but I guess
It's quite exciting as well, though.
It kind of is, yeah. It's weird. Weird.
Well, it's because you're doing the SE thing. It's like a little bit dangerous, it's a little bit hot, but it's like this could go all wrong. It might not be profitable, but it feels good.
Actually, what comes to mind is I play a lot of chess, and there are times where the time is running out, and I don't have enough. There's no time to think, because if you let the clock run out, you lose. So you just gotta just go. It's exciting, but risky too.
I suppose there's a scope of use thing where, like, ILI resemblers like to be competitive, but maybe in their spare time, when they're done doing the TE thing, and do the SE and the FI thing.
Mm-hmm. That's like the board game groups for Athen. That's where he's not working. That's his SEFI time. His friends are makes his friends through that group, like, you know.
I'm not sure that competitiveness ever stops. It's just hidden. Can't see it.
I mean, okay, this might be a different thing. Is that different for you, Sana, as I resemble a number 4?
No, I'm also competitive in the privacy of my mind.
Right. Okay. What do we got here? Number 5. So number 5, Enrique. What do you reckon to that?
Around them, allies usually gather a group. Around them, allies usually gather a group of people of widely differing professions and often incompatible views, thus building a system of checks and balances. Oh, okay. Well, that makes more sense. That part about gathering people kind of threw me off, but
Yeah.
it is true. Like if I have something in my head or some kind of plan that I need to work out, and I want input from other people, I will consult different types of people, and I will just kind of see what the that's like kind of like data gathering for me. So I'll ask this person, oh, what do you think of this? Or, what do you think of that? What do you think of that? What do you think of that? And then I'll take all that information in and see if there's a pattern.
I think number 5 sounds a little bit like ILI doing a little bit of the SEE thing. So like a little like a miniature, like there's like certain bits like that. Like for instance, when it says about LII can get expressive, that sounds a little bit like SEE politician gathering people up. There's certain things in Victor's model, like when it looks a little bit quirky, it's like, oh, that's why he's put it in there, because of that feature of the model. Do you think that's true, Rachel, about number 5? And do you think it does sound a little bit ESFP-ish? A little bit of an ESFP kind of thing today? A smart ESFP that's got the business logic on.
Yeah, it seems like that's kind of something they do really well. But for the INTJ, it's more of an intellectual utility to have different people around with the different views so they can check, like the checks and balances. That makes sense. I think of Thomas Jefferson reading that because I think he's either INTJ or INFJ. So he would have SE here, I would think. My guess.
How about LII for TJ? Thank you very much.
For Jefferson?
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right then.
We'll get into that another time.
Controversy in the Model G Hangout.
Okay.
Let's see if we've got here. All right. Okay. Capacity for being an informal leader. I'm just looking at little bits of SEE. Prefers to deal with problems immediately. This is very artisanish. Capacity for being an informal leader. Problems immediately. Makes decisions based upon actual balance of forces. That's interesting. Balance of forces. When he puts here, because that's a part of Victor's definition of power sensing of resistance, balance of forces. Where's going to put here? Different points of view, checks and balances. Skilled at negotiations and maneuvering. In an emergency situation, can be really heavy load for a short while. Pays considerable attention for the right image. Oh, interesting. Right. So a little bit of SEE with that one about the power sensor resistance, having forces in balance. Right. So I will now go to, and this will be the finale. My 1 out of 16 for extroverted sensing. Let's see how you do with this then. So to Enrique first, then Rachel. I'll just make sure. This is from Dario Nardi's book, 8 Keys to Self-Leadership. There's some overlap with the Socionics version of SE. I think the Socionics version of SE concentrates a little bit too much on power. But
I would say number 1.
yeah.
I mean the first one of part 1.
Yeah.
Um,
And also, if you're saying your answers, like if you do it in like sort of 2 aspects on it, whether you do it and how much you would like to do it, sort of like there's 2 angles on it.
and I'm not just picking it because it's green.
Yeah, that's just my single tip. And you're probably thinking, oh, I've got to pick that. I've got to be better than LII at this.
No, I notice it because it catches my attention.
Were you doing it during your sport playing when you're playing handball?
Yeah. Impactful features.
Oh, I've got something for you. When you're playing handball, do you watch the player before he moves the ball? Because you get an idea of how he's going to move the ball by the way he's moving before he actually hits it. So you got a little bit of a clue, like how much of a wind up they're doing, the way they transfer their weight, things like that.
But it's really fast, so you can't even turn your head all the way back. You just kind of see him like through the side.
I've got to
tell the direction that their arm is going to swing.
Now, to some players, some tactical players, like taking it up a level, will they have a little bit of a lead up to fool you? As if you think it's going one way and then suddenly change their body language at the last moment in that technique.
Look at what the SE, the 4D, 3D,
tactics
SE users, what they do is they swing their arm one way, but then at the last moment they modify their
that's the thing,
and the ball just goes in a way that you wouldn't expect, or they do the same exact movement but the ball goes in different directions.
Right. And this is the thing about those with a tactical intellect. They absolutely prize being unpredictable. So a slight digression about Trump. Trump loves being unpredictable. That is an asset tactically, but it is not diplomatically. Because diplomatically, people need to know that a partner is reliable and that you can trust them. And if someone's all over the place and unpredictable, it's like, well, why should I trust this person who's unpredictable? So diplomatically, it's a liability. Tactically, it's an asset. Right. So what about these other 2?
Really follow your gut instincts and exciting physical impulses. That sounds...
Keyword freely.
Yeah. I don't say that I do it freely.
Yeah.
I wish I could.
Yeah.
So for that one, if I want to be honest, I'm going to have to say no.
Yeah.
Instantly read visible cues to see how far you can go.
And I'll just say to the audience that the key bit there is the motivation behind it to see just how far you can go.
Yeah. I don't think that one applies either.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? It's the thing that you really want to, you wish you could get better at, but it sort of contradicts other functions. So, Rachel, what do you think about those top 3 re-Athen? Is it like, oh, we'd love to be good at that, but not so much?
Yeah, I think it's about the same.
Bradley, do you think that's pretty much the case with your father? Like, he'd like to be good at those top 3, or he already is because he developed? What do you reckon? Your father read those top 3?
I'd say more for the middle than the outer 2.
Right.
I think for my ILA friend, he pretty well does all 3.
Right. How about you, Sana, with the top 3? And I'll just let everybody know this is the most basic kind of SE. All right.
I do not do the first one.
Right.
I'm very bad at it. Anything I observe is subconscious. I don't know that I'm doing it. Second one, I would say that I follow my instinct, but I don't know if that's NI or something else and not so much SE. So I have no idea.
Yeah.
And the second part, exciting physical impulses now. And the third one, I think I do that when I'm in the like the counseling situation.
Yeah. Because then you know just how much to be directive, like to push someone.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, so that would be an example of territory. When Sana is on her territory, narrow scope of use, the SE can be quite powerful. So an example.
Yeah, I don't have any doubts in that moment that I'm judging it correctly.
Right. Okay. Well, we're going to go up to intermediate use of extroverted sensing. So, what do you reckon to that, Enrique?
Quickly? No. I fail at life when it comes to quickly anything, so no. Easily get in sync physically with no, none of those.
So I'll just ask you, Rachel, to see if you're better at this, because ENTJ resemble. What about those top 3 in the middle 2 for you?
I definitely think the first one, I'm always noticing stuff in the environment, extrovert anyway. So I think that I just do that, especially movement. The seeing how far I can go, that's kind of also on my territory, but in a workplace, I'm trying to get something done. I mean, I'm really trying to gauge if the other person's going to have the energy or the ability or, you know, the motivation to do something. So kind of in that way, taking advantage of immediate options for action. Same with the quickly part. I don't know how quick I am physically. I often have that thing where I'm like, oh, I could have, if I was just a little bit faster.
Right.
So
But do you think you're a little bit quicker than INTJ though, than ILI?
Maybe just for the nature, just from the nature of being extroverted.
Yeah. And also they tend to be a little bit more negativist. Like think more about the consequences.
Yeah. I definitely don't think as much about it. And then getting in sync physically is still somewhat of a challenge. I still feel pretty awkward. So I would say like, sometimes I can. It kind of half and half on that one.
Right. And Sana, would you? I don't know if I asked you about number 2. Would you like to take advantage of immediate options for action, or?
I'm also pretty slow. I often don't have the I can't react fast enough, and then I miss the opportunity, and then I regret it later. So. However, I do find that I do make a lot of decisions sort of on instinct, and I think it comes down to the NI sense of timing. And when the timing is right, then I will just act, and I won't think about it.
I've just thought of a context where INTJs are actually using this function, and where they can see how they relate compared to other people. So when you're all playing computer games, these things are going to come into the fore. So do you notice that when you're playing computer games that, hey, other people are making decisions quicker than me? I'm taking too long.
I think that it takes me, because I play with SE ego types quite a bit. And I find that they learn things much faster. It takes me a very long time compared to them because they get it almost instantly.
Yeah.
And I have to kind of practice and practice, and then I catch up. But it takes time.
Yeah, that's that tactical intelligence of something happening, learning quickly. They know what to do. Boom. can
Yeah.
adapt quickly to the new information.
Yeah, I just kind of have to accept it, that I have to practice more than they do. And
Also, yeah, go on.
And I don't think I don't know what getting in sync physically with people means. Well, I probably don't do it since I don't know what it means.
Yeah, it's probably a body language thing.
I imagine it as like you're standing in the room, and I imagine what it would be like to not feel awkward about like, well, where do I put my hands, or what do I?
That's the thing, Mark, when I say when you see the SE DOMs and the way they walk, the way they carry themselves, they can walk like panthers. Very cool,
Yeah.
very comfortable in their skin. Oh yes. So there's also a woman that did on the. I think I showed it to Bradley and to Sana. The woman that talks about the Kersey temperaments, and then when she talked about the SPs, it's they don't care as much, just like ENTJ, but they're more so. They don't care as much, or they get over a failure quicker. And because they get over a failure quicker, they'll learn from that experience. And as Sana says, they react to the new information. So Sana, in your experience of seeing these SE ego types playing computer games, do you think they will learn quicker from their mistakes and almost like turn a mistake into a positive as like a learning experience?
Yeah, they don't seem to. They don't really seem to even think about it very much. They just kind of. They learn.
Yeah, trial and error. Right. Right then. So we're going to get back to Enrique. So we've got the advanced use of extroverted sensor. The stuff that you would love to be super good at. That would also contradict. That's the thing. When I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, no, this is silly. It contradicts like being like thinking ahead. So I'm proud I only got 1 out of 16.
Speak for yourself.
What do you get out of this, Bradley? Are you saying, "Oh, I'm knocking out 6, man"?
Well, I'm not. I mean, I have 2 out of 16. But in terms of seeing if it's something that I want to be good at, I do at least want to be better at it. Like, I see how it can be beneficial.
Right.
For me, yeah, let me click on it. Become totally absorbed as you move, touch, and see what's around you. Yeah, I don't do that. I try to. Enjoy the thrill of action and physical experience at the moment.
Wait a minute, you do it when you do the handball thing. So
Yeah.
You can do it when you're on your territory in narrow set of circumstances. You can get into that mode.
Okay, so how should I be thinking about answering? Like, what should the algorithm be? Should it be like things that I'm able to do in certain situations, or
Yeah, that's the thing, because that's the thing about I would say about that block, the self-affirmation block. It's very much a thing of you can do these things in a narrow set of circumstances. So when you're playing handball, you're forced into the extroverted sensing mode of immersing yourself in the present context where you've really not got enough time to consciously think, to even think a word, because everything's happening so quickly.
So if that's the case, then I would check the first 2 of part 3.
Right.
Because I definitely enjoy the thrill of it also.
Yeah, but that's when but this would be an example of, remember I said before about the suggestive function can be strong in a narrow set of circumstances. But when you're not playing the handball, do you think you can be deficient in that area? Whereas SE ego types, especially SE DOMs, according to Dario, is they are just ready to spring into action most of the time.
I'm not. This solely applies to handball.
Yeah.
So
Right. territory. So I think you've. Oh, what about that? So this is the bit that really does sound like power sensing. The last one. What about that one? Spur action and get results simply by making your powerful presence felt.
No. Sounds cool though.
So Rachel, as an ENTJ resembler, what do you think about these two blocks? I don't know if we did section 2 with you. How do you rate yourself with these?
Yeah. I think I can become totally absorbed. Like once I've been in a hike for a while, like once I've kind of had a chance to like immerse, then I feel like I can be pretty immersed. Because I'll be that person that'll notice a snake like out of the corner of my eye and I can grab it, or like a little lizard or something.
Grab a snake? What are you, an ESTP?
Oh, I don't know. I've loved snakes ever since I was a kid, but terrified my mom. I would pick them up.
I'd fall down the mountain. I'd be running so much.
You guys have rattlesnakes?
No, not here. The snakes up in Washington are pretty harmless. And I actually grew up in Ohio, and we also didn't have many poisonous snakes. There were some like on the rivers and creeks, like water moccasins, but no, I was just picking up the little, like this long, little garden snakes. But yeah.
That would give me PTSD, seeing a snake.
Really?
But Bradley, what are you with snakes? Like, I mean, are you going to be picking them up, or?
Not even if they're
Nope.
Not even if they're house snake and fully trained, and like not even if they're a house pet. You know how people like
No way.
Tank. You're just like, yep, get the thing away from me.
Yeah, I was fascinated by it. I don't know. I had to pull towards it rather than the fear of it.
Wow.
Yeah, Miami, in the Everglades by Miami, there's a whole bunch of crazy snakes in there.
And
well, that would start to terrify me, because those are like big pythons and stuff. I mean, that would scare me.
There's anacondas in there.
Wow, they're big.
People have pet anacondas, and then they get too big and they release it into the Everglades, and now there's this like anaconda problem. And
I've heard. That's just crazy. And they've even eaten some of the alligators.
Flipping heck. Must be small alligators, otherwise it's like flipping prehistoric anacondas, like kind of just after the dinosaurs, I suppose. Oh, so for you, Rachel, you never got to the last one then. What do you?
Oh,
another thing.
Again, I feel like I can make my presence felt if I'm in a situation where I'm confident in my expertise or my knowledge of something. Then I think I can give a little bit of push. But if I don't have that, I really don't. I don't want my presence to be felt, because I'd rather not interfere.
Right. And I think that's a thing that can be modified by somebody's physique. So even though you're on the petite side, you can still do that thing with the spurt action and get results. It's easier being a guy if a guy's like 6'6".
Well, for me as a woman, I think it's as simple as like, I don't take on like shrinking body posture. I just will not. I'll be more open, and I'll take up more space. And that's when I'm feeling confident. I will take up more space, and I won't be like, if an older man or someone's talking to me, like I won't appear like I'm, kind of submitting. I'll relate to them as an equal in the body language.
Yeah, that's what I was saying a few hours ago about, like, you can see it, extroverted sensing, and the way people carry themselves. So Bradley, what do you think? Are you ticking any of these? Do your siblings tick them?
What do you think, Dan?
I think probably not, given that you said you only had 2 ticks.
Yeah.
I can do the
Okay.
maths.
But you make a good point about siblings.
Yeah.
Well, they're both 7s on the Enneagram, so they do like they quickly move to take advantage of immediate options because you know, I mean, you're a 7, you can sort of relate. You see something, you want it.
If
and
it's
then you
not
do
too
it.
risky, physically.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some sort of like previous experience that goes into, you know, calculative risks of
Yes.
you know, it's something that you sort of learn. Like SPs generally just take risks when they're younger, and they generally go through the process of like falling down and getting back up. And I guess if you're lucky, at some point you sort of can estimate your own ability. And I think they've generally done a good job of doing that. It's hard to say about the getting sync physically because I still don't know exactly what that means.
So which bit?
Step 2, part 2, the second bullet. Easily get in sync physically with people around you.
Ah, right. I think it just means like body language stuff. Adapting.
Well, actually, I do know that some SC egos can like mirror image people's accents very, very easily.
Mm.
If that's sort of what that means, but
It's
but
movements.
anyway,
It's kinesthetic stuff. It's like
that's what I figure.
Yeah.
But I haven't observed them close enough to know.
right.
Part 3. Yes. Enjoy the thrill of action, both of them. Become totally absorbed as you move. I wouldn't know what that looks like, so for like the first bullet in part 3, I don't know what that looks like, so I can't know if they're doing it or not. Get results simply by making your presence felt. Yeah. Not necessarily
How
like.
do they do that? Do they just look at someone with a mean look? That's like then they do it.
Yes, and also it's sort of like they move and people they act and people get out the way. So in terms of like spurring action, I'm not sure if they can like manipulate other people by making their own presence felt. I haven't seen them do that.
Oh, here's an experience thing. You've learned to sort of like resist this kind of stuff, these kind of like tactics on you as you've grown up.
For the most part, like in like full-blown confrontations, in full-blown confrontations, it's a lot harder for me to like sort of stand my ground. But for like the superficial like micro stuff that SE egos do, yeah, it doesn't really have that much effect on me.
Right. There you go. Importance of so I will finish just by so people have been through that just and now you can see that there's some overlap there with at least the way Olga defines extroverted sensor. But you can see some overcome obstacles, freedom of action, willpower. She's put a lot of stuff in here. Beauty, sexual attraction, reflexes. There you go. Quick actions, agility, and reflexes. That sounds like Dario's kind of SE. Seizing the initiative. Impact. That's a bit 8-ish, that protection. Interesting money. Relational evaluation, reading the situation.
I think there's a bit of other functions in this, but it's mostly
Yeah.
SE.
Yeah, Olga, it's you know what happens? It's like the NE ego types that define Socionics NE will put lots of good stuff in the NE, and maybe Olga's putting all the good stuff in SE. So you can get this bias
Yeah.
Right.
But just in terms of what was it? Maybe it was a different description. I think she had some like feeling type judgments in here. Just can't find out what they are.
Well, I mean, unless it's that bit at the top.
It's SE in general, though.
Pardon?
It's pretty SE in general. I think she did
Yeah.
a really good job of like being honest about it.
Yeah. So it's a little bit better than other bits of Socionics where it's just like, it's power. That's it. Well,
Yeah.
right then. So we'll get the final word from Sana. So is Dario's definition of extroverted sensing sort of like the way it comes through in that inventory? Does it have some overlap with power sensing in Socionics?
Yeah, I mean, of course, all that is included in it.
Right.
It's just like he has a very he doesn't have the same emphasis.
Right.
And to me, that emphasis is important because to me, the force part of it is the main thing that I relate to it, and not so much the living in the moment part, even though it's connected.
Yeah. And when we look at enneagrams of SE ego types, especially SE DOMs, you know, it depends whether they're 8-ish or 7-ish. So the 7s will be more in the moment, 8s will be more about power. And in general, SLE, SETX will be more about the power, and SEFX, ESFP will be more about freedom. And this is why Victor has SE plus as power sensing of resistance, and SE minus in SETX and SLE as power sensing of subordination. All right, there. So we can sort of. So Bradley, do you have anything to say on this? Do you think we've covered it in depth?
Yeah. I think, minor tangenting, but in general, yeah, we did a pretty good job of going over both SE and TE. Both the functions in general and how they relate to ILI. So yeah.
And trying to get a little bit more, and looking at the externalities internalities then, because that's like quite a tricky thing to understand. Trying to make it a bit more solid.
Right.
So what about for you, Enrique? Did you get anything out of this hangout?
Yeah, I thought it was a good hangout. We covered both of those IMEs and thoroughly, and yeah, I'm about to get ready for some handball myself. So
yeah. We have 6 viewers live at the moment, so hopefully it's good for them. So what about you, Rachel? Have you learned some stuff? Has it been good?
Yeah, absolutely. Every time helps me to solidify my understanding of the Model G.
Right.
So,
what about you, Sunny? You're always honest. Like, how much has been good and how much too much tangenting?
Well, yeah, someone has to do it, but I thought it was interesting to contrast ILI and LIE. I thought it was very enlightening.
Oh, very good. So it's goodbye for me, and
bye.
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 bye.